Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined here by Matthew Hurley from the GAA Statsman podcast to grade every county from the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship from A to F. We obviously did this in hurling a couple of days ago, so if you haven't checked that out, make sure to go and check that out if you get a chance. We'll be grading every county, all 31 counties in the All-Ireland Senior. Well, 32 actually, because we will be grading London as well. Obviously, Kilkenny don't play senior football, and I don't really think there's a point grading New York as such as well, because they only played a couple of games, and it does maybe seem a bit unfair to judge them too much. So, yeah, we'll be running through all 31 counties as well as London. And just a reminder, we're brought to you by Declan Kirby GAA Star, best children's GAA book out there on the market at the minute. You can find it on Amazon, Easons, all good bookshops. So make sure to check it out when you get a chance. Matthew, how's things with yourself? I suppose the inter-county football is well and truly wrapped up. I know we have a junior final still to come in ladies football, but I suppose the GAA season is pretty much done and dusted, and we obviously ran through the hurling championship a couple of days ago, and now the football championship.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Aaron. Yeah, it's crazy to think that it's ended in early August. Like, there's only the junior final to go on, the Camogie finals next week, involving two Cork teams, coincidentally. So hopefully, and arguably three as well. Jennifer O'Leary is playing for Armagh, the junior final as well on Sunday. So Cork legends. So should be a good day for Cork fans now in the Camogie. But yeah, inter-county season's over. But as Larry McCarthy said, the 98% of players now get their chance to relish themselves, going out and play some club action. And it looks like the rumours are spreading now that the club championship's going back to Dublin, Kilmacud Croke. So we'll see if that happens now in the club championship, or can someone like Kilcoo or the Bars or Padraig Pearses take the crown. But we'll have to see over the next few weeks, Aaron.
Absolutely, yeah, and we definitely will be releasing plenty of club videos and podcasts, all the rest, out in the next couple of weeks as the club football championships get well and truly up and running. Well, I suppose we'll start off with the Leinster Senior Football Championship, everyone's favourite province. So we'll run through all the counties in alphabetical order, and I suppose we'll start with Carlow. Obviously a fairly disappointing Division 4 campaign by their standards. They the worst defence, I believe, in all four divisions, and I remember them against Sligo and they got absolutely trashed. But look, they recovered quite well. I mean, they obviously beat Tipperary in the Tailteann Cup, and then also gave Westmeath quite a run for their money as well. Westmeath only beat them by 5 points, the same team who went on to win the Tailteann Cup. So there clearly is good players in Carlow, that way, but I suppose all in all, it's a weird one with them, because it's like a lot of these counties, a lot of them have very limited resources, don't have a big pick of players, so it's kind of hard to judge them. But what were your thoughts on Carlow this year?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Carlow there having small resources, it probably changed my mind a small bit. I was actually going to go for C because of their league campaign being so poor, their championship campaign being so good. Beating Tipperary was an unreal achievement. I don't know if Tipperary actually take the Tailteann Cup seriously, but then they went on and only lost by 5 points against Westmeath, who were an unbelievable team, as we all know. So fair play to Carlow for that. So maybe because of the resources they have, I'd be nice to Carlow. I'll give them a B. I think it was a good enough season for them. The league campaign wasn't that great. They lost to London, but as we know, London had a very good year themselves in the Connacht Championship, the Tailteann Cup and Division 4. So it wasn't that much of a disgrace in the end. So yeah, Carlow developing nice under Niall Carew. There's some very nice players coming through. They weren't always going to reach the same height as Turlock O'Brien, let's be honest. That was peak Carlow. But for now, yeah, I give them a B. I think they've had a solid enough year with the resources they've had. They're one of the smallest counties in Ireland. So fair play to Carlow for getting close to Westmeath more than anything in the Tailteann Cup as well.
Yeah, I've gone for a C. I do think when you look at their performances in the Tailteann Cup and some of the big performances they put in there, I don't think there's much between a lot of the Division 4 sides. And I think with the likes of Dara Foley, Colm Hutton, I do think they could be onto something next season if they can carry on that momentum. It's obviously easier said than done, but I would give them a C. You then have Dublin, and I suppose one of the big counties, and have obviously won the Leinster Senior Football Championship 12 times in a row now, which is absolutely extraordinary, really, and probably more sickening for the rest of Leinster, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, look, I will say it as it is. Like, I think a very disappointing season from a Dublin perspective. Like, relegated from Division 1. I think for a team of our quality, for the players that we have, we shouldn't be getting relegated from Division 1. I know Con O'Callaghan wasn't available throughout the entirety of Division 1, but like, there is a lot of good players in there, and Costello, Rock, Fenton in midfield, you know, like, and that spine of that 6 in a row side is still very much there. I know there's no Cluxton, McCaffrey, no Paul Mannion, but generally speaking, I do think Dublin should have done a lot better in the league. The championship season, you know, like, first half against Kerry, very poor. Second half, very good. It maybe ended on a slightly more positive note, given the fact that they put in a very good performance against the eventual All-Ireland champions. But what do you think on Dublin this season?
It is a hard one to judge, even though I was thinking about this coming on to the podcast. Like, in the championship itself, you only really played Kerry, no disrespect to Cork, Kildare, Meath and Wexford. Like, Wexford especially, that was and foregone conclusion result in many ways. Meath as well. Kildare, yeah, it was a good performance, but I think it was more so Kildare's defence was absolutely awful against Dublin and Croke Park. Like, Division 1 wasn't great. Tyrone, you went up to Healy Park, and Vernon said you won there, but to get relegated for this Dublin team, like, it wasn't a great league campaign. Even the Armagh game, you were just flat-footed in that game. And what I learned really from this year, you can't really cope without Con O'Callaghan in that team. Like, Con just changes the whole dynamic of the team. He was the top scorer even from play in the whole championship, and he only played 3 games. That tells you how good a player he is. And against Cork, he didn't have the edge that you usually have. Against Kerry, he didn't have the attacking flair. Like, he had loads of wides against Kerry. He had a very low shot percentage, and that ultimately cost Dublin the game. They had actually more shots than Kerry in that semi-final. Like, if you have Con on the team, I think he could be up there with All-Irelands, but when he's not in the team, Dublin look very, very ordinary. I know it's only one player, but he's absolutely exceptional. And Dean Rock doesn't offer much for play. Cormac Costello is in and out. Kieran Kilkenny's probably the only player, the only forward really that shows up without Con. So that's a bit of a worry for Dublin. It's a hard one, really. Like, you've reached the semi-final of the All-Ireland. You won Leinster for I don't know how many times in a row, really. It is at the moment, but Leinster's gone beyond the joke at this stage at how uncompetitive it really is. I'd probably give him a D, to be honest. I know a semi-final, but Leinster isn't really what Dublin are really contending for at this stage. To lose to Kerry in the semi-final when you had more shots than Kerry, and then to get relegated to Division 1 as well, to compound that, I think, and without Con O'Callaghan, Hugh Gordonry, I think a D is fair. You might argue a C, but I don't know what you think yourself, Aaron, but I'm sticking with a D for Dublin.
Yeah, I actually have gone for an F, so I've probably gone for a little bit worse in my opinion. But I just think for a 6 in a row team to be relegated from Division 1 2 years later, I know like the league isn't what Dublin are judged on necessarily. I think All-Irelands are the main thing. And look, if Dublin had been relegated and won the All-Irelands, they probably would have gotten A. So it kind of is a strange one in that regards. But at the same time, I just think given the quality of players and given the fact that like there is going to be a big turnover of players in the next couple of seasons, I know like the likes of Fenton, Kilkenny, Con, even Paddy Small, like they're all at the right age. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. But the likes of your Rocks, your Fitzsimons, Johnny Coopers, these lads, like they probably are going to step away from the panel in the next sort of couple of seasons. And I just think for the underage players to be coming through, to be playing in Division 2, look, it might benefit them because there's a lot of teams who've played in Division 2 in the last couple of years and actually done well. Like Galway this year went on to an All-Ireland final, Mayo the season previous. So sometimes being in Division 2 can actually benefit the county. But I don't know, maybe I might swing it up to a D. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. Like the first half performance against Kerry I thought was very poor. But then again, Kerry are a very, very good team. So it is a hard one. Like it would have been interesting to see how they would have gone on against Mayo in the championship or Derry or Armagh. I think maybe we'd have a bit more of a because if they could come through those teams, then I'd be confident enough to bring them up to a D. But look, either way, whether it's an F or a D, I still think it's been a disappointing season from a Dublin perspective.
It has, yeah, in fairness. Like, you mentioned the 6 in a row team, but most of them players are gone now. Like, I even noticed, look at the bench in the match program against Cork. Like, I was looking at Cork's bench compared to Dublin's. Cork actually had really a stronger bench than Dublin. Like, you look at Dublin's bench, it was like, who are these players, you know? I know they came from younger underage and they need to be given a chance, but Owen O'Donnell coming from the hurlers, like, I imagine if they had James McCarthy that day, or Moore against Kerry, like a lot of players are stepping away now for Dublin. That's a bit of a worry. Will Dessie Farrell leave? Remains to be seen. I honestly think Dessie Farrell leaves one more year. I think sacking him really after only 3 years with the job that Jim Gavin did in 2019. I think that's a bit harsh, in all honesty. So I think he probably deserves at least one more year. But yeah, it's going to be hard to see where this Dublin team goes. With the Division 2 thing, look, I think it could benefit you, definitely. Like, Mayo reached another final. Galway did it. Donegal did it in 2014 against Kerry. They were in the Division 2 final against Monaghan that year. So I think it could definitely develop you down in 2010, of course, for the Division 2 final as well. So it can happen. It could definitely happen. I think Derry are probably the only team probably up there with Dublin at this moment in time in Division 2. That's a bit of a worry. You won't play the likes of Kerry, Armagh, Galway, Mayo, just to test yourselves as small, but that'll be a bit of a worry for Dublin. But yeah, you'll have to welcome yourselves to Drogheda or Páirc Uí Chaoimh or get the Gaelic grounds next year, Aaron. So get comfy in Division 2. I'm sure you won't like the ride, but look, that's where Dublin are at this stage, I'm afraid.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is going to be interesting, all right, seeing Dublin playing the likes of Limerick and Louth next season. Like, I don't know, like in some ways it's kind of exciting because, you know, as fans, maybe we might get to travel to places that we don't normally go to, which is the likes of Limerick and Louth and Clare. But on the flip side, it is going to be very strange, sort of like being in Division 2, and it'll be interesting to see what attendances are like in Croke Park. Like, I would have personally loved to see Dublin go back to Parnell Park, but having them in Croke Park, I suppose, is interesting nonetheless. But you mentioned Dessie Farrell there. Obviously, there have been a lot of rumours in the last sort of week or so about him potentially stepping away, and all sorts of candidates flying around. Like Declan Darcy has been a name a lot of people have been mentioning, given the fact that he was Jim Gavin's assistant during that 6 in a row spell. But like, yeah, like I kind of do agree with you at the same time. Like, I think if he was to be moved on, then fair enough. That, you know, I could understand it, but at the same time, it doesn't bother me too much if he sticks around, because I do think he is a legend, and I do think the championship season ended on a bit more of a positive note with that performance against Kerry. So it is a tricky one. But what are your thoughts, Desi? One more year and that's it, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Like, it was always going to be hard to follow from Jim Gavin. Like, you have to give Daisy credit for really grounding these Dublin players and really to recover the way they did in Division 1 to a certain extent. I know they got relegated, but they lost 4 games in a row. The confidence would have been on the floor. But then to go up to Healy Park and Oma and then to beat Donegal as well, that takes some bottle in fairness. And to get Conor Callahan back in the team when there was rumours that he'd certainly left for the hurlers, like, in fairness to Desi, he steadied the ship there. And even to get close to Kerry. Like, Kerry are a brilliant side, and even for Dublin to get within a point, within a Sean O'Shea wonder strike of drawing with Kerry. I mean that's not a bad thing for Dublin at all, because this is a Dublin team in transition, really. A lot of Dublin fans probably won't agree with that. There's still some older players there, but as I mentioned, the bench isn't as strong as it used to be. The likes of Ross McGarry there, Larkin O'Dell, I'm sure they're good players coming through the ranks. Pat O'Cuff, Williams, one run as well. Pat O'Cuffy, Byrne, Kieran Archer. I'm actually surprised they haven't been given a show. Maybe they've been injured. But them players like Pat O'Cuffy, Byrne destroyed everybody in the Sigurdsson Cup in midfield. Like, why isn't he in the team? You know, so there is questions about that with Dublin. If they play those in Division 2, I know there's the argument in Division 2, if you play a second team, there's the risk that you kind of got complacent in that division. And someone like Clare or Cork could catch you cold or something like that. But I think to some extent that's what Dublin need to do now. They need to play these young players in Division 2, because if they don't play them next year, when are they going to play them? In Division 1, when the sides get tough? That's a question that they need to answer truly. But I think Desi needs to stay. He needs to stamp his authority on the team. He needs to bring in these young players like O'Cuffy, Byrne and Kieran Archer, definitely.
100%. Yeah, Sir Klopp says, are you doing this alphabetically or by division? We are doing it alphabetically, but we're going province by province. So we're starting off with the Leinster Championship, ran through Carlow and Dublin already. So we'll move on to Dublin's near neighbours in Kildare, who also got relegated from Division 1. They did go down with their heads held high, though, in many ways. Like, they did beat Dublin. They drew with Kerry, one of the only sides not lose to Kerry, actually, this year, in a one-off game in the All-Ireland Senior Football Champ, or in the league, sorry, I should say, in the entirety of 2022. Obviously, their Leinster Championship campaign was disappointing. Obviously, that defeat in the Leinster final, their performance just very, very open at the back. Considering how well they played against Dublin in the league, they will be very disappointed with that performance. I remember watching them against Mayo, and I felt like they should have beaten them in that qualifier game. Like, they had so many chances, and there is talent in Kildare, and I do think if they can get the best out of Hyland, Flynn, Dara Kirwan coming through, there is talent there. Like we've seen with the under-20s, had a very good season as well. So, but at the same time, it's a hard one to judge Kildare in some ways, isn't it?
It is, to be honest. Like, their championship form was pretty average, really. Like, against Westmeath. Westmeath could have won that game in the Leinster semi-final. The Leinster final, it was the defending in that game from Kildare was just shocking at stages, because like, there were stages in the game where Kildare defenders would actually go to one corner to a Dublin player and then leave Conor Callan or Cormac Costello free in space. I mean, it was just awful to watch from a Kildare point of view in that Leinster final. They did improve against Mayo, but take into account that was a poor Mayo team this year as well. So maybe they should have even won that game in Croke Park. So for Kildare, it's a tough one. I know they played well in Division 1, but arguably as well, they only played well in Newbridge. Once they went out in Newbridge, they didn't play particularly well in any competition. So that was a big thing for Kildare. I think the only game where they played well outside Newbridge was the game against Louth in the Leinster quarter-final. That was it. So that was a bit of a worry for Kildare there. But this might be harsh for Kildare fans, but I'd probably give them a C, bit of an average season. I know they did well against Kerry, they did well against Dublin and Monaghan, of course, in the league. But those were games in Newbridge. When they went outside their comfort zone, they didn't play particularly well. Like in Croke Park, there's arguments they played well against Mayo. I think they probably should have beaten Mayo, because Mayo weren't particularly good this year. Like, the low win was impressive, but then the Leinster Championship, as it went on for Kildare, got worse and worse. So yeah, I'd give them a C because of the way they played, really. Them two Leinster games in particular, to Westmeath and Dublin, the big games when it mattered, and Kildare flattered to deceive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd go with a C as well. Like, I think it's like what you said there. Like, I think there was some good moments from a Kildare perspective, but ultimately they did still get relegated. They are still back in Division 2, despite finishing with 5 points. And again, another, I do think there is a chance for the likes of Kildare and Meath to close the gap on the Dubs. I really do. Like, I do think they mightn't beat Dublin, but I do think there's a chance for them to be very competitive, given Dublin's inconsistencies. And I just think when you allow the Dublin forward so much space and you make it so easy for them, like, at least put in a challenge. But what do you think? Like, could Kildare and Meath sort of start closing the gap in the next couple of seasons? It is a hard one to know at the same time, because Dublin look like they're regressing, but at the same time, if they can find a few players at underage level, maybe they will. But the future does look bright for Kildare, I will say that.
It does look bright in fairness, but we could also say the future looks bright for Offaly or Cork, and they're not translating into senior success. So there is that argument with Kildare as well. Will they close the gap to Dublin? I don't think they'll do so next year. Definitely don't, because they're just way off, in my opinion. With Meath, I think Colin O'Rourke might get something out of them players, because he's as passionate as they get with Meath. We'll get on to Meath in a minute. Kildare, I just think they need a fresh guy in. Like, Glenn Ryan doesn't really inspire that much confidence as the senior manager, in my opinion. Like, he didn't do that particularly well at Longford, for example. Like it's going to be a tough one with Kildare. Like, I think they have nice players like Jimmy Hyland, Ben McCormick did excellent for play this season. Kevin Feely did very good from midfield, was even mentioned from an all-star point of view on the Sunday game recently. So that tells you how good he did. But the worry for Kildare is the defence, really. They have to sort that out. If they sort that out, I think they can deal with Dublin. I don't think they'll do it next year, because I do think Dublin still have the players to motor through Leinster teams, the likes of Con and Kieran Kilkenny, etc. But I do think Meath and Kildare, they're getting closer. Like, especially with the Meath appointment with Colin O'Rourke, we'll have to see how that transpires. Westmeath even win the Tailteann Cup might bring some confidence with them. So them three teams in particular, I think, could challenge. With Kildare, though, I think the defence needs to improve. If they don't improve that, I think they're going nowhere.
Yeah, moving on from that, we have Laois, and I think this is a fairly easy one, really. I think it has to be an F in my opinion, because I think back-to-back relegations, obviously, came down from Division 2 at the end of 2021, relegated again, poor in the Tailteann Cup, poor in the championship as well. Like, I know, like, it's one of them things with Laois where they do have limited resources and everything else, but there was a time period where Laois were very good, like in the mid-2000s, had a very good team, lots of very good players. I do think they have, like, they were in Division 2 for a couple of years, so I do think they should be doing better. Like, the fact that they're going down to Division 4 is a little bit odd in my opinion. Like, I do think they should be at least the sort of high-level Division 3, maybe end of Division 2 type team, but yeah, like, I'd imagine you're agreeing with an F, or maybe you're going to surprise me.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's strange what happens in Laois, really. I don't know what's happening in that county at the moment. Their ladies footballers might give them some confidence. They're doing particularly well, as we've seen on Sunday. They had a very good performance. The story with Ashley Donoghue, etc. But these Laois players, I don't know what it was behind the scenes. It just didn't click for them. Even with I watched them against Cork last year in the league, and I thought I was relaxed against Laois, to be honest with you. Like, usually teams would put it up to us in recent seasons. Laois didn't once in 2 games, really, and that's a worrying thing. Like, they still rely. Ross Munley's a brilliant player and all, and he's definitely a player to behold, but he's nearing 40 now, and Laois still rely on him. That tells you something's not right in Laois. They are a passionate football county, definitely, but I just think there's something not right. There's some nice young players, in fairness, like Mark Barry. I think Tierney is another very good young player as well. But a lot of the older players are now going. You look at Colin Begley's gone. I think John O'Loughlin left recently as well. Ross Munley might leave in the next few weeks. Graham Brody left recently, even at a young age. So something's not right with Laois. I don't know what it is, but they need to fix it up sharpish. Maybe the success of the ladies footballers will drive them on even further. But for now, this year wasn't great for Laois, in all honesty. Like, getting relegated to Division 4. And honestly, Aaron, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't come back up to Division 3. I think Division 4 would be very tough for them next year with Sligo and Leitrim. So, it doesn't look good for the O'Moore County.
Yeah, they definitely wouldn't be my pick anyway to come up from Division 4 at this early stage. Like, I definitely have a couple of other counties ahead of them, and it was strange because the season kind of started well. Like, they done well in pre-season, and I remember they beat Meath, I think, in a pre-season game, and then looked, they started the league quite well, but they just fell away completely. And I remember people were looking at them as a side potentially even to get promoted. So the fact they got relegated was very, very surprising. And a team that did stay up at Laois's expense was Longford. Longford again staying up in Division 3 2 years back to back. And it's interesting because you obviously had Rian Brady, who stepped away, going into this year. He opted out. He had a new manager who obviously comes in there, and with Porrick Davis having left the squad as manager last season. So an interesting one for Longford. Look, they stayed up in Division 3, so I think they'll be happy enough about that. Like, it's one of them where I know they were close to getting promoted from Division 3 like 2-3 years ago. But at the same time, like, Longford is one of the smallest counties in Ireland, so you can't really expect too much from them, I think, anyway, personally.
Yeah, same. Like, they're one of the smallest counties in Ireland, and I think the abolishment of the qualifiers will hurt Longford, because that's where actually they excel, really. They don't excel in the Leinster Championship, but to stay up in Division 3 is an unreal achievement for Longford. And even I was speaking at my podcast to Oran Kenny, their corner forward, and they have some very nice young players, including Oran is a very good player. Like, Kevin Diffley's a nice player. Darren Gallagher for midfield is very good. So they do have some very good players in Longford. Billy O'Loughlin was the new manager that came in. He's kind of steadied the ship. There's some nice young players in Longford. Joe Hagan is another one who did very well at Sigerson Cup level. Did excellent, in fact, one of the top scorers in that competition. Mickey Quinn still hanging around there as well. So, yeah, it's a tough one with Longford. They're one of the smallest counties in Ireland. They stayed up slightly in Division 3. They didn't win a game in the championship. They lost, well, albeit it was the Westmeath and Fermanagh, two tough teams. They were always going to be tough for that Longford side. But I'd probably give them a C. Average enough season, stayed up in Division 3. Did well enough in games, didn't win a game though in the championship. There's some nice young players going forward. I think Billy Loughlin's left them in a good place. He's actually got abroad to America to have work commitments. So that's why he's left Longford in the past few weeks. But it'll be interesting to see who Longford get in now as their new manager. But I think the team has some nice young players, and you wouldn't be able to see that about other counties with similar populations. So fair play to Longford for finding these players, like the likes of Darren Gallagher, etc., Joe Hagan. So, geez, how did they do it with such a small population? Jason Matthews is another one, very good player as well. So, yeah, they have some very nice young players, Longford, but for now, this year, probably a C's fair.
Yeah, and they have brought through a lot of under 20 lads this year, which I think has been quite impressive. The fact that they have stayed up in Division 3, I think it probably is maybe a bit of an underrated achievement in my opinion. Anyways, and Louth are another side that really are getting the best out of what they have at their disposal. I mean, obviously since Mickey Hart's come in, he's really sort of taken them up a notch, taken them up another level, back-to-back promotions up from up into Division 2. And, we've seen Sam Mulroy absolutely shoot the lights out this year. He's been in incredible form. They lost obviously in that game to Cork. It was a close enough game in the championship, but and they were heavily defeated by Kildare, which was a little bit surprising, the margin of defeat. But at the same time, I think Louth have had a very, very good season, and I don't know if you could really ask for much more, to be honest.
You couldn't know. I have to give them an A because of getting promoted for Division 3. They did well overall as well, even to stay with Cork. Albeit I was very disappointed with them in the way they played against Cork. I thought, if they attacked us more, maybe they could have got more joy. If they started Conor Grimes in that game, maybe they could have been in the second round of the qualifiers, who's to know. But Mickey Hart, he stuck to his tactics and he got the best out of that Louth team. And to take into account, 2 years ago they were in Division 4. Or even a year ago, in fact, they were in Division 4. So this is an unbelievable achievement for this Louth team. Sam Mulroy, outstanding. I think Kieran Bird was excellent as well. Came back from AFL, very good. Conor Grimes, Tommy Jordan from midfield, Liam Jackson. They have some very nice players, Louth. They'll go into next year confident. And I know that a lot of people will say they'd be the whipping boys of Division 2, me alike as well. I probably think you agree with me, Aaron, but I just think this Louth team will make it difficult for teams like Dublin and Derry because of the way they play. They play 15 men behind the ball. I've seen us in Parky Queeve, I see the right in front of me. Even with Sam Mulroy, when he takes a free, the 14 other guys are back behind the 45-metre line. So this is going to be very hard to break down that Louth team. I think Dublin will eventually do it because Kieran Kilkenny, all them will have long kicks in them. But other counties in Division 2, I think, will find it very, very difficult to break this Louth team down. The problem for Louth really in Division 2, I think, next year is when they have to come out. When they came out against Cork in that qualifier game, they got destroyed in the end of it. So, that'll be a worry for Louth. But if they keep maybe 1 or 2 points ahead of a Meath or Kildare or Cork or Clare, that could be a decent win for Louth coming. So, yeah, I'd have to give them an A because of the way they got promoted for Division 3 and considering they were Division 4 only a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be very tough for them in Division 2, obviously, make no mistake about that. And I think even if they were to get relegated, I don't think anyone would really, bat too much of an eyelid, really, because, what they have achieved coming up from Division 4 and Division 3 and back-to-back seasons, I think is an extraordinary achievement. Sir Klopp says Longford C, can't see them staying in Division 3 next year unless Down have another stinker. Yeah, I'd give them a C there as well. It is going to be tough for Longford, all right, as well, because you do have obviously Cavan and Tip coming up, so it will be a difficult campaign for them. And I'd have to give it an A for Louth as well. I think they've had a very, very good season. We then have Meath, and very disappointing year from a Meath perspective. Another very disappointing year, in my opinion. Look, I don't think I didn't think they'd get promoted personally. I know some people maybe might have tipped them, but I always felt that Galway, Roscommon, Derry would have a bit more than them. But the fact that Meath at one stage looked very close to potentially going down to Division 3 and into the Tailteann Cup, very, very worrying. And although they did stay up in Division 2, they got some big results when they needed to get them. You know, but like obviously the defeat to Dublin again, like just being absolutely blown to pieces, losing to Clare, like with all due respect, Meath are a huge historical county, and to be getting knocked out of the championship by Clare, you know, I think is very disappointing from a Meath point of view. Things do look up, and maybe Colm O'Rourke coming in now can get a tune out of them. But if you're to look back on last season anyway, I think it's been a very disappointing year for Meath.
It has been, yeah. Like, even looking back through the year, their only good game was against Cork. Typical, I know. But, yeah, it was that was their only good performance this year. Like, even against Clare, like, I was hearing from Tommy Rooney and other journalists, their star man was the goalkeeper, Harry Hogan. And he was throughout the year. Like, I have to give him credit now for Meath. I think he was avoided the year. I thought he was outstanding for this Meath team. Like, he kept them in the game against Clare. He kicked 45s constantly. He was excellent. But other than Hogan, I don't think any Meath players stepped up. And that was the worrying thing about this Meath team. And I think Colm O'Rourke needs to fix that issue. Definitely, like Jordan, they have potential. Jordan Morris is an excellent player. Luke Mitchell, for example, he was a brilliant underage player. Where's he gone? Jack Flynn is a good underage player. Where's he gone? So there are players in Meath, but I just think they need a bit of a kick. You know, that's the thing. And I think Colm O'Rourke is the man to do that. They do have a decent enough defence. I think they have improved there, including the goalkeeper is excellent. I think he's one of the best goalkeepers in Ireland at this stage in Harry Hogan. But as for a rating, I know they stayed up at Division 2 where they recovered very, very well in fairness. Like, let's not forget, in the first half of the league against Galway, they scored nothing. Zilch. So that was a bit embarrassing from a Meath point of view in that game. But in fairness to them, they got a good win against Cork. I think they got a win against Clare towards the end as well. They really put it up to Derry in the last game as well. So that was something. They got to the quarter-final of the Leinster. They beat Wicklow, but Dublin was a bit disappointing. They lost their temper a small bit as well. Clare was very, very poor from them. Only Hogan really performed. So I'd probably give him a D, not necessarily an F, because I think that's a bit harsh on Meath, but I think a D overall for the year for Meath is fair.
Yeah, I've gone for a D as well. Like, I mean, it could have been worse. It could have gotten a lot worse. Like, they could have been relegated. And I think if they had been relegated from Division 2, 100%. An F then for Meath, like going into the Tailteann Cup, especially for a team with their history. But look, at the same time, you know, that Colm O'Rourke appointment, like I've spoke about it with a few other people already and everything else, but it's a huge appointment really for Meath, and it's a huge couple of years now for Meath, because I do think they've got a lot of good underage players. You know, we were saying before, maybe with the, you know, potential that maybe Dublin are slightly slowing down, there might be a chance for a county like Meath to potentially sort of, you know, close the gap a little bit. So, you know, it's a huge couple of years now for me, because you look at Division 2 next season, Derry are going to be in there, Dublin, Kildare, you know, Louth are not going to make it easy. Limerick are a side that's progressing. Clare are very consistent in Division 2. So, like, if they're not careful, you know, you've got obviously yourselves in there as well. Like, so, like, if they're not careful, I nearly put Cork in the same bracket, you know, like they could find themselves in Division 3, like, you know, in 2024, you know, if they're not careful.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, on a given day, a team could lose, definitely. And that was my point about Louth. Like, they'll make it difficult for teams like Meath and Clare and Cork and all them. Slightly different situation. I actually think Cork are in a very good situation at the moment. The players look well up for it. With Meath, I don't think the players are up for it, but I think that's the thing that Colm O'Rourke will come in and rectify that. I think he's that kind of a manager. He's passionate about Meath football. He's brought in Stephen Bray, as far as I know, as well. Excellent footballer in his day, and he knows how to win Leinster titles, etc. Of course, he did very well in that game against Dublin in 2010 as well. So, yeah, it's a very good play. People coming in. I'm hearing Sean Boylan will play some part as well. So that'll be very exciting from a Meath point of view. I just think what this Meath team need is a kick up the backside, really. Some of them players. They haven't had so in the last few years. I think they will under Colm O'Rourke. I think he's that kind of a coach. I think he will get the best out of them. A bit like a Porrick Joyce appointment with Galway. Something that Galway needed, and they got it. I think Meath will get similar though. And Yeah, I think Meath could do well, but they have to be very careful now. Limerick on their day could be excellent. Louth could park the bus. Clare, if they keep Colin Collins there, they're nearly guaranteed in Division 2 at this stage. And then the other sides, well, Cork could be dragged in, but the other sides then, Kildare are too good to go down. Derry and Dublin are miles above the rest. So, like, it could be a terrible year for Meath if they don't get it right. But I actually think, look, before the Culver Rourke appointment, I actually tipped Meath maybe to go down from Division 2 to Division 3. But when he came in, then I was like, he's the right man for this job now. And he will get the best out of this Meath team. So I think they will stay up. But the question is who will go down. That's the big $1 million question, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we've a long way away anyway before we need to start worrying about promotion and relegation for the 2023 National League. Shay Rafter says Aaron Lynch should be playing for Meath. Class young player, Kerry Trim to an All-Ireland intermediate final. Yeah, and I suppose another player we haven't mentioned is, well, their own Jack O'Connor. There's a lot of Jack O'Connors going around, and Meath have their own version playing in a corner forward, and he's done very well. So there definitely is, look, the potential is definitely there. We'll just see. You know, I definitely think they need a bit more bite or sort of, you know, physicality in their team. And in my opinion, I think that's the big thing for Meath now in the next couple of seasons. Offaly were one of the sides that did get relegated from Division 2, and they were beaten in the Tailteann Cup semi-finals as well at the hands of Westmeath. Look, Offaly have had a couple of injuries, and there is kind of a transition there in terms of you have the likes of your Keith O'Neills and Jack Bryans, who are obviously coming through, from the under-20 All-Ireland team last year. You still have veterans in there like Niall McNamee, but look, Offaly, again, although they were relegated, I don't think it was necessarily a bad season, in my opinion.
It wasn't, no. Like, even when they got relegated, like, they drew against Meath. They probably should have won that game, in all honesty. Meath got a hugely controversial goal at the end of that game. Down, they went out to Park Esther and won that game. That was a brilliant win for them as well. And against Cork, like, if that was Cork teams of the past, Offaly would have won that game. They just ran into a Cork team, basically, that were ready to roll, and they were just determined to stay in the league. That was just unfortunate, Offaly. Like, and a lot of people actually predicted Offaly to go down. So, like, that's a brilliant achievement for Offaly in itself to even go to the last day and to be competitive. So fair play to them for that. The only bad point really was the Wexford game. I was disappointed with them in the way they lost that, but at the same time, maybe it was a blessing in disguise, because the next game after that would have been Dublin. And look what happened to Wexford in that Dublin game. So that could have easily happened to Offaly. They got to the Tailteann Cup semi-finals. What I noticed about Offaly actually in the semi-finals, they just need a little more strength and conditioning. Like, a lot of them players, they're young players, they're quality. Like, I've seen some of the scores they were taking against Westmeath. Absolute quality in their team. Like, Cathal Flynn scored a superb goal. Like, Keith O'Neill is a player to watch next year, I think. I think he's an unbelievable player, unbelievably skillful player. Noel McNamee there. Like, Cormac Egan was injured this year. Like, if he came in now next year, he'll make a big difference. Jack Bryan is another year under his belt. So Offaly some good young players. Margaret Tynan was missing for the semi-final because of COVID. So, like, that was a big loss in itself as well. Paddy Dunnigan's an excellent goalkeeper. So they do have players all over the field. The question is who's going to come in as manager, because it was released, news was released at the weekend that Tomás O'Shea is actually coming back down to Cork, so he's not taking up the Offaly gig. The under-20 manager, Declan Kelly's not either. So it's a question who will take the Offaly job. That'll be a big job on their hands there. For this season alone, though, I think probably a C, because they reached the semi-finals of the Tailteann Cup. That was probably the best they could have achieved with these group of players. I know they won an under-20 last year, but these players need more strength and conditioning. They need a few more years in senior, and they will get right. There's some skillful players in Offaly, I've no doubt about that. Like, they won bad result this year against Wexford. That was it, really. Like, in Division 2, they were very competitive. So I think it wasn't a bad year for Offaly. I think they'll improve next year. The question is, who will they get in charge?
Yeah, I've gone for a C as well. Like, and I think at the end of the day, like, they pushed a lot of teams very, very close. They were very, very close to beating Cork on the final day, and I think you would have nearly been talking about giving them an A then. So, you know, like, I think Offaly have had a very, very good season. They were very competitive in Division 2, a lot more competitive than people thought. I think a lot of people thought they would be a bit like down and maybe get beaten every game. And as you said, Keane Farrell's another player to come back in next season. He was very impressive in 2021. So there are a lot of positives from an Offaly point of view, and certainly I think they would be my early front runners for Division 3, even ahead of Cavan, actually, in my opinion. So I think Offaly are looking very, very good. Westmeath, Tailteann Cup winners, the very first Tailteann Cup winners. They didn't get promoted from Division 3, which will be disappointment from their point of view, and they were a little bit inconsistent in the league, but given their performance against Kildare, which I thought was very impressive, they nearly beat Kildare that day in the Leinster semi-finals, and then winning the Tailteann Cup, playing some excellent football. I've given them an A in the end because they did win the Tailteann Cup. It's a big tournament, obviously, that they've introduced. They've guaranteed themselves a place in the All-Ireland next season, which I think was the main sort of thing for getting out of Division 3 anyway. So although they missed out on promotion narrowly, they still had a very, very good season, a great season. So I've gone for an A. What have you gone for here?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've gone for a day as well. To win the Tailteann Cup, the way they played football as well, I thought was superb. Like Rondo 2 was an excellent player. Kieran Martin coming off the bench. John Haslin was unbelievable in this campaign. Luke Loughlin, the story he had this year, like the amount of stories coming out of Westmeath, I think it was heartwarming, really. Kevin Maguire, that block at the end, he got suspended during the Tailteann Cup, and even to come up at that big moment and block down the Cavan player, superb. Yeah, I definitely give Westmeath an A. And look at the scenes in Mullingar. That just shows you the meaning they had towards the Tailteann Cup. And even against Kildare, they performed pretty well. The issue with Westmeath over the past few years was their inconsistency, really. Last year, they actually performed well against Cork, against Mayo, against Meath, and arguably they could have even beat 2 of them 3 teams, maybe even 3. So Westmeath were motoring along nicely. It was just the consistency. But I think this Tailteann Cup win will be the blueprint for this Westmeath team. I think they'll top Division 3 next year, get into Division 2, and the sky's the limit, really, for Westmeath. I think they'll do well. And they could challenge for a Leinster title in the next few years with that young group of players. I think they have a very nice crop of young players. They play football the right way. So fair play to Westmeath. Congratulations on the Tailteann Cup win. And no doubt A from me.
Yeah, I'd put Westmeath ahead of Meath at this moment in time, given on their performances from this season. And, I don't think there's a lot between them and Kildare, as we've seen in the last 2 times that they've played each other. So there is definitely a potential for Westmeath to maybe sneak into a Leinster final or something of that nature, as long as they avoid Dublin along the way. So definitely a lot of potential there from a Westmeath perspective. You then have Wexford, and again, another disappointing season in my point of view. I think, again, it's hard to talk about Wexford, really, because they're a county that all the time you think might have a bit of potential, or maybe they'll come up from Division 4. They finished last year on a very positive note, but they were nowhere near promotion in the end. Got beat. They obviously got a win against Offaly in the championship, which was, I suppose, the highlight of their season. But obviously, lost to Offaly then in the Tailteann Cup. I mean, you can't really judge them against Dublin. So what's your take on Wexford this year?
To be honest, if it wasn't for the Offaly performance in Wexford Park this year, I'd probably give Wexford an F. I know that's a bit harsh, but they were my tip actually to go up for Division 4. There was a lot of potential in this Wexford team. With Wexford, you're always synonymous for that 2008 campaign. A lot of people go back to that, but even with Shelbalear's club campaign, I thought this Wexford team is on the cusp now. They're on the cusp with something outstanding, but it just never materialised in the league or the championship, other than that game against Offaly, really. And it was a difficult year for Westmeath. I'd probably give them a D because of that win against Offaly, but very tentatively going for a D there. I thought they were pretty poor this year, Wexford. Who will they go for next is the million-dollar question, but yeah, they need to improve next year. I don't think they'll go up next year because Division 4 is actually improved now next year with Leitrim under Andy Moore and Sligo there as well. Laois, even though how bad they've been this year, they'll come back roaring. So it'll be very difficult for Wexford next year. And yeah, I'll give them a D solely down to the game against Offaly, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and another thing they will be joined by in Division 4 next season is Wicklow. But I suppose in a similar fashion to Offaly, I don't think Wicklow had a bad season necessarily. I think when you look at the things that went against them, Shawnee Furlong obviously retired at the end of last season, who's been one of their top class forwards really over the last couple of years. they have a change in management halfway through the season as well, halfway through the league season, which is very hard to comprehend for any county, really. Like, it's a lot of disruption there. And, you know, they've a lot of good under-20 players that have started to break through. Kevin Quinn looks very good. Owen Darcy, I've been very impressed with. And, you know, like, I'd give them a chance in Division 4 at getting back up. Like, you know, like, although you obviously look at the Laois who went down, like, I felt like Laois went down with a bit of a whimper, whereas I think Wicklow, like, very nearly actually stayed up in the end. So, not a bad year for Wicklow, in my opinion, anyways.
I don't think it was a bad year at all for this Wicklow team. And even Davy Burke leaving at the start of the season as well. That's 3 managers, or even 4. They had a joint manager coming in, Alan Costello. I forget the other fella's name now, but they had joint managers coming in for Colin Kelly afterwards. So that was always going to be difficult for this Wicklow team. A lot of players going abroad. Obviously, Shawnee Furlong retiring. And most counties would actually implode. But this Wicklow team, they stuck together, in fairness to them. They beat Laois in the Leinster Championship. They beat Waterford in the Tailteann Cup. I know Waterford aren't the highest quality team, but in fairness to them, they did pretty well. Like, Kevin Quinn seemed to be a goal-getter this championship campaign. He got 3 goals in the Leinster Championship. He got another 2 against Waterford, so fair play to them. Then I'd probably give Wicklow, it's a tough one. I'm edging towards either C or B here. I'd probably give them a C because they went down to Division 4, but only slightly. Look, they played excellent. They played excellent football, in fairness to them. They could have easily stayed up in another year of Division 3, but alas, they went down. I think they could be a trade, actually, to go back up to Division 3 next season. They could be a good dark horse pick there. Owen Darcy's a good player. Kevin Quinn, Podge O'Toole in the middle of the field. There's some very nice players there in Wicklow. Mark Jackson, obviously, in goal. Excellent goalkeeper there. So, yeah, I'd give him a C. I'd be close enough to a B, though, but just a C, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd go with a C as well. Like, I think it is close, though, as you said. Maybe a B- or something like that would maybe be a bit more sufficient. I did give Wexford a D as well. I think I might have maybe forgot to give them one there earlier, obviously, when we were speaking about Wexford. But yeah, look, we'll move on to the Munster Championship then. We've Clare, first of all. And, I mean, Clare very, you know, doing what they do best, which is obviously staying in Division 2, being very competitive. You know, picking up points along the way, being a bit of a surprise package, and beat Meath, obviously, in the championship, which was a huge result for them. They then go and beat Roscommon in the final round of the qualifier, something that nobody's seen coming. I know they were absolutely trashed by Derry in that quarter-final, and I was at that game, and, you know, they were really beaten out the gate after about 10 minutes, really. But I do think at the same time, to get to an All-Ireland quarter-final for a county like Clare, who are predominantly a hurling county, you know, like, I think that's been a very good season for Clare.
Yeah, and because of that Derry game, I've actually gone down to a B for Clare. Like, if that Derry game, they were competitive, I'd probably give them an A, because what they're achieving is absolutely unbelievable. Like, to lose Gary Brennan, a load of them players as well, David Tubridy getting on, they still produce young talent. And that's a credit to Colm Collins and his team. There's rumours Colm Collins is actually going to stay on just with a new management team coming in. So that's exciting for Clare. A lot of people predicted they'll go down to Division 3. I never predicted they'll go down, because I know with this Clare team, they'll fight to the bitter end. With this manager, he's one of the best managers in Ireland, in my opinion. I think what he's done with that Clare team is nothing short of remarkable. I think he's a brilliant manager. Just the way they played against Derry, I thought they kind of got over themselves after the game against Roscommon. They kind of got overconfident, and eventually Derry just cut through them so easily. So, yeah, that was a difficult one to comprehend for Clare. But other than that Derry game, I thought it was an outstanding year for Clare. There was a moment that they could have easily gone up for promotion to Division 1 as well. So a lot of people were talking about that. So fair play to Clare. I'd give them a B. And with Colm Collins saying next year, Clare football is going to improve even more.
Yeah, Irish Footy Vlog says here, was a huge shock versus the Rossies the week before they played Meath, and it was an awful game. Big win versus the Rossies. Yeah, it was an incredible comeback, really. Like, it was a result that I don't think anyone's seen coming. I think Roscommon were like 4-5 points up nearly going into injury time. It was, like, for me, it was done and dusted. There was no way back. And then incredibly, they obviously get the penalty, a late equaliser, and then they win it as well. Like, it was absolutely unbelievable, and definitely probably one of the big, you know, maybe the only big championship shocks we probably got this year, to be perfectly honest, at least in the All-Ireland season anyways, in the football season. So, but yeah, we then have your own County Cork. And look, I suppose they did get to an All-Ireland quarterfinals, which definitely, as we were saying before, like if you had said that to a Cork fan at the start of the season, they definitely would have took it. And like John Cleary, since he's come in there, you know, like he has got a tune out of the lads. Like they do seem to fight tooth and nail. And even against Dublin, like although Dublin won fairly convincingly in the end, like they did put in quite a good battle for large parts of that. So like a positive season in the end for Cork, even though you just about, I suppose, avoided relegation to the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, I suppose like a lot of people will give me flack over this video. No, I know I gave Cork an F last year, but this year I'd actually go for a B. Like a lot of people don't see what's going on in Cork. Like we've had managers over the past few years with Ronan McCarthy, Padder Healy, Brian Cuthbert, where the players just don't tools, and it was just kind of depressing to watch as a Cork fan. But with this manager, John Cleary, you're definitely right. The players have definitely taken to him. There's a structure now with this team. Like in the past, you wouldn't have known what Cork team would go out in the field, the starting 15. You're almost sure of the Cork team that would go out now. John Cleary has his team set. And to take into account the injuries we had this year, Sean Meehan was injured, probably our best player last year, and he was injured in that defence. We still found John Cooper, Rory Maguire, and Matty Taylor in the half-back line. That's absolutely brilliant. Tommy Walsh there, another young player that came in the league campaign. Like, we have some nice young players coming through. Conor Corbett was injured this year. Blake Murphy had his few injury problems. Stephen Sherlock didn't play at the start of the league. So we had, players coming in and out, but the players just stuck to the system under John Cleary. And we didn't, like Brian Hayes coming in this year, I never thought he'd come in for the hurlers. Like, I was kind of hoping more than anything that he'd come in to the football team. But in fairness to them, they got Brian Hayes into the team on the bench, but albeit, like, he's in the squad now. He's part of the panel there. And Conor Corbett to come back in as well. Look, it's on the up for Cork. With some nice young players coming through. And Cleary, we've wanted this guy since, I would say, Coonahan left in 2013. So we can't really complain. We have him now. He's brought a tune out of the players. And even against Kerry, like, I was listening to a Cork fan coming out of the stadium, and some of them were talking to that Cork fan saying, never would I thought I'd say that the footballers actually put in more heart than the hurlers. Like, I know we lost by 12 points against Kerry and 11 points against Dublin, but the players died out in the field. You can't really say anything against. And another thing, we had more turnovers than both Dublin and Kerry. I know we lost the game, but in fairness, that's something that we can take into the next few years as well. And to get to an All-Ireland quarterfinal, for them players to play in Croke Park, that'll be an invaluable experience. I know a lot of people say, oh, we could go down next year. Early prediction, no, but I think we could finish fourth in Division 2 behind Kildare, Derry and Dublin. I know it's a long way off now, but I think we have the right players now. We have the right management team. We just have to get behind them. And that's the main thing with this Cork team. The support is a bit questionable, as usual, with the footballers, but I think the only thing that's really stopping us is how good Kerry are. They're unbelievable. But this Cork team, it is improving. We're on the way back now, and hopefully this is the start of something new with this Cork team. I'd probably give them a B. I don't know about yourself, Aaron, but I was happy with this year, happy with the way the lads performed, and they gave their all for Cork this year.
Yeah, I'd go for a C, and I think Irish Footy Vlogs here makes a good point. I think Cork and Meath disappoint hugely for their tradition. I know Cork have a very young side. You'd like to think in the next few years they can improve. And yeah, like it is one of them. Like, you just look at Cork, and for the resources that they have compared with a lot of other counties, they should be doing a lot better, in my opinion. I know at the same time there definitely has been improvement from how they started the year compared with how they finished the year. So I do think there definitely is a lot of optimism for the future. Like, I suppose, though, like, one thing about Cork, though, like, that I've noticed a lot of the time in the last couple of years is they seem to have, like, a lot of good moments, and then all of a sudden they'll get a bad result, and then it will just flip, and then there's a downward spiral. They seem to be either doing very well and improving and looking good for the future, or it seems to be a crisis. Like, it seems to be kind of one or the other. And when they play teams that are, like, far better than them, and there's no pressure on them, they seem to actually play very, very well. But then, when you look at it in the opposite way, when they've lots of pressure on them, a bit like that Munster final versus Tipperary or a couple of games in the league. I know they got over the line against Offaly in the end in the league, but there does seem to be this weird thing with Cork where that's why I'm not 100% convinced at this moment in time, but I can understand it though from your point of view.
The thing is, though, Aaron, like, how many of those, like, we perform poorly against Offaly, we perform poorly against Louth to an extent, and Limerick. How many of those games would we have lost in the last few years? When you look at Tipperary, when you look at the league games, like Oisin McConville mentioned this in the Sunday game, Cork were too soft in the last few years, and I completely agree with him. John Clear has brought in something now where the players are battle-hardened. When things go wrong, they still find a way. Like with that Limerick game in particular, Brian Donovan scores a goal, then Paul Walsh gets sent off. If that was Cork 3 years ago, we would be worried. We'd be worried in the stands and we'd be thinking we're on the way for an embarrassing loss again with Cork footballers. But the players, they stuck in there. That's the main thing with this team. We haven't said that over the last few years. And the players have done absolutely brilliant in that regard. Like against Louth with that defensive system, we probably would have lost that game maybe 2-3 years ago as well. But we still found a way to win those games. And even with Kerry and Dublin, we didn't lose embarrassingly or anything. Like we just lost the games. And the one thing with Cork that would be critical probably is the strength and conditioning. But that will come in time. We have players that are now, built up a bit. Colin McCallaghan, for example, in midfield is a beast, really. Damien Gore as well, coming off the bench. We do have players that have improved strength and conditioning-wise. Not so quite yet now to compete with Dublin and Kerry, but John Cleary mentioned that in the post-match interview against Dublin. That's the aim we need to get on now. We need to get to Dublin and Kerry's level. It won't take a year. It won't take 2 years. And even from them, inside the camp, Keith Ricken, who was manager at the start of the year, obviously, set a plan for the players. If you're going to stick with this plan, Grant, you could stay with the team. If you're not going to stick with this plan, get gone. And the players who didn't stick to the plan got gone. We have players now that are committed to Cork football. That's the main thing. And I know it's a big county, big resources, but it's something, I know it's something small, but it's something that the Cork football folk wouldn't have said over the last few years. I know people in other counties wouldn't see it. I think the only person that actually sees it in other counties is probably Oisin McConville, who was talking the Sunday game. The rest of the country don't, but we see it now. We see improvement in this team. We see players that are going to fight for the jersey in the next few years. I'm confident as a Cork fan. I know people would say from the outside that they're not convinced, but I'm definitely convinced over the next few years. I think we will be back to where we should be in the next few years. It might not take next year, but it will take 2-3 years until this team will be back up with the big boys again.
Yeah, look, and it is going to be interesting. And like what we've said, even about Meath and some other counties, like the potential is definitely there. Like he obviously won, a couple of underage titles, minor All-Irelands, under 20 All-Irelands. So there is a lot of potential there in Cork, and there is a lot of players that we probably haven't even seen or heard of really yet that haven't broke onto the senior team yet. So there definitely is potential there anyway, make no mistake about that. Obviously, you got Kerry then, and unfortunately had to, kind of ruin the mood a little bit there, speaking about Cork. Yeah. But look, Kerry, undoubtedly an A. Like, they won the league, they won the championship, they won Munster, they won everything. Like, they lost to Tyrone in the league, but it meant absolutely nothing in the end. Can't disagree. It's a bit like when we were speaking about Limerick. Like, I mean, they were undoubtedly the best team in the country, and they finally, anyway, broke their mini 8-year famine.
Yeah, famine in Kerry, who would have thought it? 8 years. A lot of people are waiting. 70 years, Mayo. But it's a great achievement for Kerry to win the All-Ireland. It's a superb achievement. In fact, like Sean O'Shea, that was a kick for the ages, that game against Dublin. Very good kick. Undoubtedly, it's an A, no doubt about it. That Kerry team is absolutely outstanding when you look at it. There is an argument, like I spoke to a few Kerry fans recently, and they're saying, without David Clifford, would this team have got over the line against Galway? There's an argument for that on another day. But what impressed me about Kerry, like I said it on your podcast time and time again over the last few years, their defence let them down. Their defence this year was unbelievable. They only conceded 2 goals from play in the whole year between McGrath Cup, League and Championship. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely unreal for this Kerry team. Like Graham O'Sullivan's an unsung hero. Thomas Sullivan, why he didn't get an All-Star the Sunday game, who's to know? I don't know why. But he was outstanding. Jason Foley was brilliant. Ty Morley got 5 turnovers at the All-Ireland final. And may I add, crucial turnovers as well when Kerry were under the cosh. Outstanding performance from him. And even when things were going badly in the Galway game, when they were kicking wide after wide, they still only went in a point down. So, that's the sign of a great team with this Kerry team. And they won the game by 4 points when they weren't playing particularly well. That's a sign of a great team. Could Kerry win a few All-Ireland in the next few years? I think they honestly can. I think Dublin are on the way down. Derry possibly could break the duck. I'm looking Tyrone maybe could come back into it. But other than Tyrone and Derry, I don't see anybody beating this Kerry team. I think this Kerry team will be there for the next few years. They have more players coming through. And Paul O'Shea, for example. David Moore will probably hang up his boots now, but you still have Jack Barry and Dermot O'Connor in midfield. Stephen O'Cumber, who could come in there as well. This Kerry team will be there for the next few years. As much as it hurts me or yourself to say it, well done to Kerry, brilliant All-Ireland achievement, and they will be there for the next few years, no doubt about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think the whole narrative that they wouldn't have won the All-Ireland or without Clifford, or they would have lost the All-Ireland. Look, obviously Clifford's been unbelievable, and if you take him out of the Kerry side, I mean, there certainly is an argument that they wouldn't have won the All-Ireland. But I just think it's such a silly argument because he's there. He played, he won the All-Ireland. He's one of the best footballers in the country, and he's not probably going anywhere anytime soon. So I think it is kind of a bit of a silly argument in some ways. And question is, with Kerry, will they do a Dublin and dominate for a few years, is what Irish Footy Vlog says there. And that is the big topic of conversation at the minute. I mean, it is kind of premature because they just won their first All-Ireland in 8 years. And we see with a lot of teams, like some teams, it takes them a while before they can start building up that domination. Like when Dublin won their first in 16 years in 2011, it wasn't until 2015, 2016 that they finally went on and started to dominate. But it does look, when you do look at Kerry, though, they are perfectly set up to do, I don't think they'll do a 6 in a row, but I think they might win 2 or 3 on the bounce because a lot of their players are around 24, 25, some of them even younger. You think of the likes of Paul O'Shea and Paul Walsh, who can't even break into the team. So they have a lot of good options, and they're very well set up to potentially go on and dominate the All-Ireland scene over the next couple of years.
They have, yeah. They have very good structures in Kerry over the next few years now, and Jack O'Connor there. Paddy Talley was an unbelievable coach. If there was an award for Coach of the Year, Paddy Talley would get it hands down. What an impact he's made to that Kerry team. There is an argument as well, and I inclined to agree with it. I don't know about yourself, Aaron, but if they played an Armagh or Derry, would they have won the All-Ireland? I know Galway, Dublin, there are some good sides there, but they aren't particularly sides that have defensive systems. This would be the acid test though for Kerry. If they came up against a Derry now next year, who will mask the defence. Kerry usually, historically, struggle against Ulster teams. I'm not taking away from Kerry being All-Ireland champions. They are deserved All-Ireland champions indeed. But if they played someone like an Armagh or a Derry or Tyrone in their pomp, would they struggle? That's the big argument with this Kerry team. If they get over the line against those sorts of teams next year, there is an argument to say this has the potential of being one of the greatest teams of all time, this Kerry team. I think there's not a fault really in this team. And even, I forgot to mention him as well, the goalkeeper, Shane Ryan. What a renaissance he's had. I remember in 2019, for example, against Cork, he was all over the place. Brian Hurley just patted the ball into the back of the net, and he was just frightened to come for the ball, even the Mark King goal. He looks so assured now. His kickouts are unbelievable. Another stat with this Kerry team, they got over 80% kick-out win rate in every single game of the championship. That's down to Shane Ryan. He's done absolutely outstanding. Even Jason Foley getting rinsed by Brian Hurley last year, and now he's one of the best fullbacks in the country. I think that's down to Paddy Talley as well. He's just completely changed his Kerry team, the mentality of the team. He's done absolutely outstanding. So he deserves huge credit for that. But there is an argument, I don't know, would you agree with it, Aaron, that if they played Derry or Armagh, that would be the real acid test for this Kerry team.
Yeah, I do get your point of view. Like, I think they would have enough to get beyond a Derry and Armagh, especially in Croke Park. But it is a hard one to know, all right, because, like with those physical sides and with how defensive they are, it would be interesting to see if they'd be able to sort of hold their nerve. Like, they did find a way through Galway eventually, where it wasn't maybe as overly defensive as a Derry or a Tyrone as we've seen in previous years, but like Sir Klopp says here, in Kerry's best years, they're still beaten by Tyrone, and obviously it was a league game that meant nothing. But like, I do think Tyrone are the side that have the potential to beat Kerry though again next year, because first of all, they beat them in the championship last year. I know Kerry beat them back in 2019, but I think Tyrone's physicalness and physicality and the way that they set up and play, I think they could be maybe one side. Like, as a Kerry fan, if I was a Kerry fan, thankfully I'm not, but if I was, I would say I would be most worried about Tyrone more so than a Dublin or anyone else, because, like, let's not forget Tyrone won the under-20 All-Ireland this year as well, and we will speak about them in more detail a little bit later. But like, I feel like they're maybe the contenders. But you do make a good point. Like, I think that has been the sort of conundrum for Kerry a lot of the time, has been these Ulster teams.
It has been, yeah, over the last few years. And even think about the Tyrone game last year. Tyrone caught them cold. Even Cork with a mini defensive system in 2020 caught them cold as well. And even in the past, when you look even further, Donegal in 2012, Tyrone in 2008, like, there's a lot of examples of Kerry just losing to Northern teams, down in 2010, of course. So that's just how Kerry lose games. But I think I just would be absolutely intrigued with a Paddy Tally coaching Kerry. Will that element of this Kerry team in the Kerry DNA still be there? Like, it'd be interesting to see. I don't think it will be necessarily, because I think he's changed this defensive structure completely. I think he's started from the bottom and he's gone to the top. I think he's done absolutely outstanding with that defensive system. But I think it would be intriguing to see a Paddy Tally defensive system come up against a Tyrone or a Derry or an Armagh or potentially a Donegal or Pomp over the next few years. I just think it would be an interesting thought. It'd be an unbelievable game to behold in Croke Park.
Yeah, and that certainly is something to look forward to, definitely, when next year's championship comes around. Make no mistake about that. We have Limerick then. Limerick obviously promoted up from Division 3. Obviously, they got to a Munster final, which was a big achievement for themselves, really. Like, when you think about it, I know they got absolutely hammered, obviously, by Kerry in that final, but like, they obviously get a win over Clare on penalties, which was big from a Limerick perspective. So, and obviously lose to yourselves in the qualifiers as well. Like, I think Limerick, all in all, like, I think there's a lot to be positive for, and like, I've given them a B, which might be a little bit harsh. Maybe some would maybe say an A, but I've gone for a B. I still think there was a few times maybe where they could have played a little bit better, but I don't know. What do you think?
It is a tough one. I'd probably give him an A. I know I've lived in Limerick over the past year or so. Maybe I'll be a bit biased there, but I think they've had an outstanding year. To be promoted from Division 3 when they were in Division 4 a couple of years ago, that's an outstanding achievement in itself. To beat Clare as well, albeit at a penalty shootout, outstanding. Tipperary to really beat them out the gate in Semple Stadium as well. That's a brilliant achievement for this Limerick team. I know Kerry was a downer, but that was Limerick's first Munster final since 2010. There was always going to be nerves with that Limerick team. And even with Cork, like, I noticed with the Limerick players as well, this is a coming team. When you look at the strength and conditioning with this Limerick team, JP probably putting more money into the Limerick footballers as well. So one to watch, definitely. So yeah, I'd give him an A, maybe close enough to be maybe an A minus or something like that. Probably down because of the way they got hammered against Kerry, but at the same time, I think it's been an excellent year for Limerick, and they are developing as the years go on.
Yeah, do you know what? Maybe I was thinking there, maybe an A does make a bit more sense, because when you do sort of look at it, like, realistically, what more could they have done this year? I'm not exactly sure. Like, they're not going to beat a Kerry. Even being competitive with them really is just a bit too far away right now, to be perfectly honest. So, look, they're going to be interesting up there in Division 2. I think a lot of people would have them maybe as going back down to Division 3, but there is a lot of potential in Limerick, and as you said, they have a lot of resources, finances there. So it'd be interesting to see, definitely, if they can kick on even further now in the next couple of years. You have Tipperary then. got promoted from Division 4, which I think would have been their big aim at the start of the season. And actually, if you go back to like before the start of the league, like I don't think you tipped them for promotion. I wasn't overly convinced by them either. They were very consistent in the league. They obviously had that big hiccup against Carlow in the Tailteann Cup, which followed on from the defeat against Limerick in the championship. So, to be disappointed about that, but like they did get promoted, so I think that was the main aim really for Tipperary at the start of the year.
I suppose, like, if you disregard the Carlow results, I'd actually give Tip maybe a B because they got promoted. I thought it was an unreal achievement considering the likes of Mikey Quinlivan stepped away from the panel. I was thinking, where's this Tipperary team going? The conveyor belt of talent is done. But just to lose the Carlow the way they did in the Tailteann Cup, to not really take it as seriously as many people would have predicted they would. But I'd probably give them a C. I know it's a bit harsh. I know I didn't predict them to go up to Division 3, but at the same time, to lose to a team like Carlow in the Tailteann Cup, that was a pretty bad result there for Tipperary, and to lose at home to Limerick as well, that was not great either. So, like their only championship win was against Waterford. So, could we really count that at the same time? So, it wasn't really a decent year for Tipperary. They got promoted, granted, brilliant achievement, and they got close to capping in the Division 4 final. But to lose to Carlow the way they did, I'd probably have to give them a C.
Yeah, no, I would go with a C as well. Like I think ultimately getting promoted was the main aim for Tipperary at the start of the year, but that defeat against Carlow and obviously been beaten out the gate by Limerick in the Munster Championship definitely would have been disappointing from a Tipperary point of view. But they are in Division 3 next year, and I do think that was their main aim at the start of the season. You then have Waterford, and this is a very difficult one really because I don't really know like what you can really say here. Like, I mean, Waterford, they obviously finished bottom of Division 4, but they're not really expected to do anything. Like, they're not a football county at all. Like, they're virtually nearly all hurling, and like I don't really know what to say here, to be perfectly honest. What were your thoughts on Waterford?
Yeah, we're saying this every year, Aaron, about this Waterford team. Like, you don't know how to rate them. They're bottom of Division 4, but the bottom line is there's loads of sports in Waterford above Gaelic football. Even ladies football is above it. Camogie, hurling, athletics with Thomas Barr, soccer with Waterford United. But that's like it's all above Waterford football. Evie Fitzgerald went in. And in fairness, like I see them in the McGrath Cup. They actually have some nice enough players, decent enough, but they weren't going to achieve anything realistically this year. But at the same time in Division 4, they were close in every game except for Cavan in the last game. So in fairness to them, that was a good achievement for Evie Fitzgerald and his team. Tipperary, they weren't particularly bad in the championship either. They got a bit of a culture shock against Wicklow in the Tailteann Cup. You couldn't give him any more than, it's hard to rate, probably a C. Like, it's what they're expected to achieve, nothing in just to be competitive in Division 4 and to put in a good performance or two in the championship. That's where Waterford are at, unfortunately. It's a tough situation that Efi has gone into. But nothing more you could say really on Waterford. I like Waterford as a county. I have roots from Waterford. I want them to do well, but yeah, you can't say much more than that. C probably.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Like, I think it's one of them really where they're in Division 4. They haven't been out of Division 4 in a long time, and obviously they were very competitive in a lot of their games, and they do every now and again sort of pull out a result that kind of makes you go, "Wow, I didn't really see that one coming." Like, they drew against Tipperary on the opening day of the league, and they beat Wexford last year, I remember. So, there are positives there. And look, maybe with Effie Fitzgerald sticking around, I presume he's going to be there again next season. They've had a couple of changes in management in the last couple of seasons, so maybe a bit of stability there might be what they need for next season. Sir Klopp says bring Kilkenny back to Division 4, even just to keep Waterford company. Yeah, look, I mean, they obviously won the Junior All-Ireland, albeit when they played London and New York, they weren't playing London and New York's best teams. But look, I don't know. Maybe it is a conversation to be had at some point. But look, we'll crack on into Connacht, and we have Galway then first of all. And very good year from a Galway perspective, promoted up from Division 2 They lost the league final, but they were still promoted, and I think that was the main thing, really. And then the championship, I mean, they beat Mayo, they beat Roscommon, 2 big wins, beat Mayo, first of all, their first championship win over Galway since 2018. And then they get past Armagh and Derry and get to an All-Ireland final and push Kerry, very, very close. So, I don't know, although Galway didn't win the All-Ireland, I don't really know. I don't really think you can ask for much more from them, really, considering where they've been in the last couple of seasons.
Definitely, and I think it's an undoubted A for Galway. To reach the All-Ireland final is an unbelievable achievement. And we were chatting on your podcast recently about Pádraig Joyce, the fans wanting him out at the start of the year or the end of last year. And look at what he's done with this team. I think he's done absolutely outstanding, in fairness. So Killian McDade is a player that's been revolutionised. Shane Walsh, Damien Comer, Paul Conroy, what outstanding players that Galway have. The future is bright for them. Definitely, like Matthew Tierney there as well. Tom O'Culhan, Johnny Heaney. They've good players all over the field, in fairness to them. They win a Connacht championship. They only lost to 2 teams this year, Roscommon and Kerry. So that was a big achievement for them, considering how well Kerry have done this year. They beat Roscommon as well in the Connacht championship, let's not forget. So, and even in the league final, they didn't play particularly badly either. It was just Roscommon were as good as them, really. So, I would rate Galway even lower than an A. I think they were absolutely outstanding throughout the year. I think you could really argue an A for Galway. I think they've been brilliant this year, considering where they've come from. The last few years, we were thinking, where is this Galway team going? They're a team flattering to deceive. Yes, they beat Armagh in penalties, but at the same time, in normal time, they should have really won that game, other than some errors at the back at the end of the game, the craziness that happened. So, brilliant achievement for Galway to get to the All-Ireland final, and they will be a threat next year, no mistake about it.
Yeah, I'd give them an A as well. I don't think you can argue against it. Considering where they were last season and to get past Mayo, obviously beating them in Castlebar as well, which is a big thing, really, beating them in their own backyard. And then coming through Connacht, and then, 2 very tricky games in Armagh and Derry, very, very tricky sides from across the border. So, look, you'd have to say, massive congratulations to Galway in terms of their performances this year. But I suppose the big thing, as you said, is can they keep that up now next year? Can they keep that consistency up? There probably is going to be a target out on their back now next year. I think teams are going to be a lot more wary of Galway. I think they were that team that everyone sort of underestimated quite a bit. Whereas I think now a lot more sides, counties, managers, and fans as well, I think are going to be a lot more aware of what Galway have to offer, because, they have staked their claim and they have arrived as one of the top teams in the country, and their age profile is very good as well.
Yeah, definitely. That would be the big challenge for Galway next year. Will they win a Connacht championship? I think they can. This Mayo team, I don't think is up to much now next year, so that'll be a big thing for this Galway team going forward. Will they challenge for the All-Ireland? Will they get as lucky as they did against Armagh with the penalty shootout? Not so sure. Derry will be definitely more street smart in the All-Ireland Championship next season. So maybe there is an argument they had their chance. But at the same time, that was their first All-Ireland final since 2001. So that was an unreal achievement in itself for Galway. They're back to where they belong. That's the main thing with this Galway team. And I think they will be a threat again in Division 1 next year. They should be a main threat. So, I think Galway will do very well next year. I don't think it was just a one-season wonder for them. I think they have young players coming through. The under-20s have won the All-Ireland in 2020 against Dublin. I think most of them are there now, in Culhan, Matthew Tierney, Jack Lynn. Some very nice players there for Galway. So, I think they'll do very well. John Daly's another understated player as well. So, yes, there's the argument that teams will need to watch them next year. But there's the argument as well, other than possibly Derry, Armagh, Dublin, Kerry. Who else is there? That's the big thing as well. So, I think Galway will probably win Connacht again next year, and maybe another All-Ireland semi-final, and they see where they go from here. But All-Ireland isn't that far for the tribesmen, in my opinion.
Yeah, we have Leitrim then after that. Leitrim, as you were saying there, a team that a lot of people might be picking for Division 4 promotion next season. But this season, obviously, first year for Andy Moran coming in as manager, very close to beating Sligo in the Tailteann Cup as well. I think a lot of people remember that square ball goal that clearly obviously should have been given and it wasn't. So I mean, Leitrim were very sort of hard done by in regards to that. But look, I think very good season for Leitrim. Like, you know, I think they were far more competitive this year as opposed to last year. You know, I know they were beaten out the gate by Galway in the Connacht Championship, but at the same time, you can't, you know, it's just one of them things where these counties aren't at the level of some of the best counties. You know, you're going to get score lines like that. So look, Leitrim competitive, they gave it all, and there is optimism there for the future.
There definitely is, yeah. And even I was trying to Ryan O'Rourke on my own podcast, and he was saying they could win a Connacht title. Giggled a small bit at that, you know, honestly, but at the same time, like, you have to commend their enthusiasm to play for Leitrim. In fairness, and Keith Byrne was probably one of the most underrated players this year. What a performance by him, scoring at every turn in both the league and the championship. He was superb in the Tailteann Cup and definitely deserves an All-Star in that competition. It's a tough one with Leitrim because like they've good players there, but at the same time, I know they perform poorly against Galway. But when you look at the population of Leitrim, there isn't much infrastructure there in Leitrim either. So they can only go a certain distance. So I'd probably give him a B. Leitrim, I think they played pretty well. Like, they could have easily beaten Sligo in the Tailteann Cup, and they could easily go up in Division 4 next year. They'd be my favourites along with Sligo to go up. So best of luck to Leitrim now next year. But yeah, the sky's the limit for Leitrim. There's some nice young players coming through, and Elbil Mulligan coming back was a huge boost for this Leitrim team as well. So yeah, I think Leitrim will do very well next year, and they will get better.
Yeah, I've gone for a C. I thought they would have been promoted at the start of the season. I thought, you know, and there was a lot of good performances in there, but maybe they just couldn't quite get the results. So I think all in all, like, it's been a season that, you know, I think we maybe expected from a Leitrim point of view, but there definitely is signs there anyway with Andy Moore and sticking around as well. Like, there definitely is some positives there from the future. You've London then, and it was London's first season back at inter-county football since 2019. They're obviously back in the league, back in the championship as well. Obviously great to see London back. And, you know, like, I remember doing my own National Football League predictions at the start of the year, and I said, like, if London can get a draw, if they can be competitive, it would be a miracle because, you know, like, I think they've had a completely brand new team. Like, Michael Maher as manager, you know, has had to assemble a completely brand new squad from that would have played in 2019. They've been without inter-county football for 2-3 years. But I mean, at one stage they were looking like maybe they could get promoted. They won their opening 3 games in the league, and they were competitive in nearly every game that they played in. So I think, you know, hats off to London. What a season!
Yeah, brilliant season for them. I know Leitrim got a B from me, but I give London an A simply because they hadn't played championship football since 2019, and even for Michael Maher to stick around with that team was unbelievable. And for that group of players to beat Carlow, to beat Waterford, to be competitive throughout the league as well, that was an unreal achievement for this London team. And even in the Tailteann Cup, they took Sligo to extra time. Like, that's a brilliant achievement. They were even competitive with Cavan in Division 4. Like in fairness to London, they did absolutely outstanding. Liam Gaffigan is a player that we will definitely look out for next year, and there definitely is signs that London is improving. And brilliant this season for London. Brilliant to see them back at the All-Ireland Championship as well, and brilliant to see them competitive at last. Like, I don't think I've seen a London team other than this year be competitive since really 2013 when they reached the Connacht final and took Cavan all the way in the qualifiers in Croke Park. But this year, they were absolutely outstanding, in fairness to them. And well done to Michael Maher for galvanising these players throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And yeah, deserved A, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that as well. Like, I think given the fact that they've been out of the league for 2-3 years, the fact they came in and won 3 games, and I remember beat Tipperary as well. Like, I mean, starting out, like, or I think it was match day 2 or 3, like, just an incredible sort of story for London. And yeah, like, hopefully the Exiles can keep going, can keep pushing on and make Division 4 as competitive as possible. I think that's what we all want to see. You've then got Mayo, and I suppose another year of disappointment from a Mayo perspective, obviously having lost in the in the All-Ireland quarterfinals to Kerry. They did get to a league final, but they were obviously beaten out the gate by Kerry as well, unfortunately, in that one. Look, yeah, it's a hard one to know with Mayo. They did have a lot of injuries. They did have a couple of things obviously go against them. You know, Tommy Conroy's injury was huge. Ryan O'Donoghue obviously missing in the latter rounds of the championship, which was crucial. And they did have different injuries in the league as well. In particular, that league final did a couple of injuries. So, you know, a lot of things did go wrong for Mayo, and obviously James Horan stepped away. How would you look back on Mayo's season?
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest year for Mayo, and I think that group of players was coming to the end, really, for that Mayo team. It was an outstanding team over the last few years, but you look at Lee Keegan, will he stay on though? There's a few others, Aidan O'Shea, Cillian O'Connor wasn't at his brilliant best this year. Like, that Mayo team, I don't know where it's going on, to be honest with you. Like, Galway have now overtaken them, Kerry, Dublin are way ahead of them. In the league, it actually looked promising for a point for that Mayo team, but then it slumped, the form in the league. And even in the qualifiers, Kildare should have beaten them, and possibly Monaghan should have beaten them if they got a penalty decision as well. And Kerry, they weren't really close in Croke Park against Kerry. Kerry really toyed with them in that quarterfinal. I don't know if it'd be nice to be with this grade, but I'd probably give them a D, because of their league form at the start of the year was decent, but their championship form and the end of the league wasn't great for this Mayo team. And yeah, as I said, this Mayo team, I think it's coming to the end. Cillian O'Connor doesn't look his best. Aidan O'Shea looks way off. Lee Keegan looks good in fairness to him, but how many more years does he have in the tank? That's the main question for this Mayo team. So yeah, I'd probably give Mayo a D. Maybe it'd be too nice there for Mayo, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I suppose you did see Lee Keegan on the Sunday game quite a lot there as well towards the end of the championship. And as we very well know, there is going to be some vacancies there with Pat Spillane and Colm O'Rourke obviously retiring, and you know, Kevin McStay potentially mightn't be there either, because he's been linked with the Mayo job. So yeah, like I would be a little bit more optimistic for Mayo in the future. Like, I do think they do have a good crop of young lads coming through. Like, I think O'Donoghue, Conroy, you know, Aidan Orme, Jack Carney, like, you know, they've a couple of good lads. Conal Dempsey's another player who's sort of coming through the ranks for the under-20s as well. So, you know, and they obviously got to a minor final, but it is one of them things where there is going to be a lot more transition now over the next couple of seasons with O'Shea. Obviously, you know, again, like when you're playing, like you seen James Horan a lot of the time last year, playing him in midfield, playing him full forward, like playing him, you know, in a lot of different positions, and you're wondering what is his best position. And you know, Cillian O'Connor obviously coming back from injury, it's a huge long layoff. You know, we don't know if he'll ever be the same player that he was. So there's a lot of question marks over Mayo. Like, I do think they have the talent coming through. I think with a good management appointment, whether it be a Kevin McStay or someone of that nature, I think there is potential there. But there's no doubt that, you know, I said 1 or 2 years ago that they were probably only behind Dublin, Kerry, whereas now they have fallen a little bit further behind, make no mistake about that, and they will have to do a lot more than maybe anticipated to make up the ground over the next couple of years.
They will, yeah. It's going to be a major rebuilding job in Mayo, I think. You look at they've some players in Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, but what I noticed, most of their, other than O'Donoghue and Conroy, obviously, who were unfit, the other forwards against Kerry, like, there just was no urge about them. There was no goal opportunities or anything. They just didn't go for goal. Usually with Mayo in the past, you look at Lee Keegan, Cillian O'Connor when he was on his pump, Aidan O'Shea when he was on his pump. Mayo would have gone for goals completely, even against the likes of Dublin and Kerry. I didn't see that in the quarterfinal. I didn't see that in most of the games this year. That was a huge shame for Mayo. Yeah, there's the argument that Tommy Conroy and Ryan O'Donoghue, if they come back into the team, they will improve. But that's two players, like, you know, that's going to be a huge expectation on their shoulders. So I honestly don't see Mayo doing much next year. They could even fall to Division 2, even from Division 1. I don't know what people think about that. But you look at the teams in Division 1 now, Galway are ahead of them, Armagh, Kerry, thinking no, Derry in Division 2, Dublin in Division 2. Monaghan will have a new manager coming in. Donegal have a new manager coming in. It depends who Mayo get, really. If they get Kevin McStay, I think he'll get a lot out of the Mayo players. If they get someone like Mike Solon or Ray Dempsey, that doesn't breed any confidence for Mayo, in my opinion. So they need to get Kevin McStay in. No matter how hard it is, they need to get him in because he's passionate for Mayo football. So I would put him in as Mayo manager. If you're putting in Ray Dempsey or Mike Solon, it's kind of the safe choice, and that's what Mayo don't need at this particular moment in time, especially when Galway, Dublin, Kerry, Armagh, Derry, possibly Tyrone, if they improve next year, are just pushing ahead of them at that stage. So it might be too little, too late.
Yeah, I mean they do have Kevin McStay does have a lot of inter-county management experience, which he probably does have over the likes of Dempsey and Mike Solon, but yeah, look, it's going to be interesting, most definitely, to keep an eye on Mayo over the next couple of seasons. One thing I've always learned as a Dublin fan is not to discount Mayo, because every time you write them off, they have a habit of biting you in the back. So I certainly won't be writing them off anyways, but they do have a lot of work to do anyway going into the next couple of years. Make no mistake about that. Sligo then. Good season for Sligo. I mean, got to the Tailteann Cup semi-finals. We're up there pushing for promotion in Division 4, and there's a lot of optimism around Sligo at the minute. I mean, he obviously had the success of the minors a couple of years ago. The under-20s obviously won the Connacht title this year as well. So there is, some good optimism, I feel, about Sligo at the minute anyways. And you think back to that Tailteann Cup performance against Cavan, they nearly won that game, and I know you were tipping Sligo to win the Tailteann Cup before a ball was kicked, and it seemed maybe like a little bit of an off prediction, but it could have very nearly came through. They were very close to beating Cavan in that semi-final.
They were, yeah. They were a superb team. And for the hurt that Sligo players would have felt throughout the year, the loss of Red Oak Murphy again, that was a big thing to happen to that Sligo team. But yeah, they rallied together. What a team they are. And there's rumours that Tony McAtee might be leaving. If he does leave, that would be detrimental to Sligo, in my opinion, because he's an excellent coach. He's proved that this year. They got close to Roscommon and fairness in the Connacht Championship. When you think about it, if Sligo didn't get a red card in that game, they would have even pushed Roscommon even closer. So that was something to behold there. I suppose the bad thing for Sligo really was the fact that Leitrim and London got them to extra time, and Leitrim got them to a penalty shootout. Leitrim could have beat them if decisions went their way as well in the quarter-final. That was a downside for Sligo. I'd probably give them a B, because they just didn't have enough to get promoted to Division 3. They almost did it. The scoring records they had in Division 4 as well was something to behold. What achievements they were. Pat Spillane grew into this Sligo team as well. Sean Carbine had outstanding performances. Niall Murphy. There was a question why Niall Murphy didn't start against Cavan. If he started, could they have beaten them? So that was an argument there and something to take home. But yeah, for Sligo, I'd probably go with a B. Look, it probably not an A because they didn't get promotion in the end to Division 3. But overall, I think it was a decent season for Sligo, and they are coming gradually back to where Sligo football needs to be.
Yeah, I'd give Sligo a B as well. I think they have been very competitive this year, and there certainly is improvement and optimism for the future. I would give Mayo a D as well. I think I might have forgotten to grade them earlier, but yeah, we don't have Roscommon, I suppose, to finish up with the teams from Connacht. Yeah, I mean, Roscommon were one of those sides that I felt were looking very, very good at one point. They were looking unstoppable in Division 2. They didn't lose a game at all, and beat Galway twice, beat them in that league final as well. Go into the championship, and unfortunately, lost against Galway, but it wasn't their worst performance in the world. And then that defeat to Clare just really, I suppose, caught everyone by surprise, because Roscommon were shown a lot of good signs. They were home and hose really in that game, but yeah, Clare obviously got the job done.
They did, yeah. It's a strange with Roscommon, because it's kind of like in the hurling prediction, the graded video with Waterford, because Roscommon did so well in the league. They did the championship. If I mentioned with Sligo, they didn't get that red card early on, would Roscommon have been more chasing their coattails a bit. Because Sligo actually put it up to Roscommon at large periods of that game. Galway, I honestly thought the scoreline was a bit flattering towards Roscommon. I just thought Galway were much the better team. It wasn't a 3-point game. I just think Roscommon kind of get back into the game. And then Clare, they look so comfortable, and then they throw it away at the end. It was disappointing for them. It's a difficult one because probably in the championship it'd be closer to a D or an F. In the league it'll be an A. So for that reason, I'll give them a C. Pretty average season for Roscommon. Very good league campaign. They were one of the best teams in the league. And I was tipping them for an All-Ireland semi-final. Let's not forget. And then in the championship, just things didn't get going for this Roscommon team. I don't know what it was. And I would be surprised now if Anthony Cunningham stepped away from this team. Who will they get in? I don't know. But it's going to be a big decision for Roscommon people in the next few weeks or so. But for now, I'll probably give him a C. It's probably fair.
Yeah, Paul says here Cunningham needs to go in his opinion there. It will be interesting to see if there is any changes there. Obviously, Cunningham's been there for quite a long time. Definitely deserves a lot of respect, obviously, for what he done, like winning a Connacht title, and he has sort of overseen a lot more young players coming through as well. Like, I think there is, with Roscommon, I do think Roscommon will look at what Galway and Mayo have done in the last sort of 3-4 years, and Galway getting to Connacht finals, Mayo getting to Galway getting to an All-Ireland final last year, Mayo getting to multiple All-Ireland finals. And like, Roscommon are very always competitive, and every now and again they pull out results against a Mayo or a Galway. So like, I do think Roscommon, like, they do have potential there to be competitive, not necessarily to get to an All-Ireland final themselves, but to at least be competitive and to do better than what they're doing at the minute, especially when they get to the championship. Like, as soon as they get to Croke Park and the championship, I don't know what it is, but they just seem to lose the will of themselves, really,
Yeah, I think Darragh O'Connor from the sideline view actually mentioned that Roscommon haven't won a championship game in Croke Park since the 80s, early 80s. So, correct me if I'm wrong, no, but that is a horrendous statistic, really, for Roscommon. They do have potential, definitely. Conor Cox, Inda Smith, Donny Smith, Keane McKeown, very good young player there as well. Alton Harney did excellent at times in the championship, especially against Galway in that Connacht final. But at the same time, there is the argument once they get to Croke Park, they just flatter to deceive. Like against Tyrone a few seasons ago in the Super 8s, they got hammered. Against Dublin, they got hammered. Against Cork in 2010, they got hammered. Against Clare, they just lost the run themselves in the last few minutes. So I don't know what it is about Roscommon. Maybe Roscommon fans will tell me in the comments, but I just think the only good performance they've had in Croke Park was that draw against Mayo in 2017. That was about it. So it's been very poor in Croke Park for Roscommon. And when you look at Monaghan have reached a semi-final in the last few years, Cork have reached one in 2012, Galway have reached one, Derry have reached one, Tipperary have reached two. So for Roscommon not to reach a semi-final with that pool of players, I don't know. Roscommon fans would be pretty angered by that, in my opinion. Like, something needs to be done to reach an All-Ireland semi-final, just to get over that fear of Croke Park. If they don't do that, these group of players, the golden generation of Roscommon, could be going down the drain.
Yeah, I suppose we'll crack on with the sides from Ulster then before we finish up. So we have Antrim here first of all. Like a very, very good league campaign in my opinion. Like, I thought they were very, very close to promotion. Like, and I personally think Enda McGinley done a great job with Antrim. Like, he really he got more out of them. We got more out of those lads because there probably isn't a great deal of underage success or star names. And he obviously had Paddy Cunningham, who, retired at the end of last season. And yeah, they were beaten by Leitrim in the Tailteann Cup, which was certainly disappointment. And the McGinley since stepped away. But what was your grade, Antrim, on their performance this year?
It's a difficult one because in the league, they were absolutely outstanding. They could have easily went up, and then the McGinley did an outstanding job. But they just started to deceive against Cavan and Leitrim. They only performed really for one half in 4 against Leitrim in the second half. That was disappointing from an Antrim point of view. It's a difficult one. I'd probably give them a C because their league form was excellent. Their championship form wasn't that great. They didn't have a particular score. Like, I checked the stat there that Antrim were the least reliant on their top scorer this season. So that's something that Antrim have to take forward. They a whole range of scorers this season. Ryan Murray, Owen Eastwood, and Paddy Cunningham just left as well. So they need probably more of a marquee scorer in their team. That's what the criticism might have for Antrim, really. But other than that, I think they had a decent enough year. Not very good at the championship, but in the league, they were very, very close. And next year, they have Andy McAtee in charge. That should be interesting.
Yeah, Marty says, has Armagh been done? Well, you're right on time because we're actually about to discuss Armagh right now. And look, Armagh, like very, very good in the league. I mean, they were competitive a lot of the time. They obviously beat Dublin, which was a huge, huge result in Croke Park. They were disappointing in the Ulster Championship, losing to Donegal, but they did get their revenge back on Donegal again, obviously beating them in the qualifiers, and also got a win against their big rivals in Tyrone. So, like, there's a lot of potential in Armagh. There's a lot of very good players. It's one of them where it'll be interesting to see, can they kick on now over the next couple of seasons? Like, can they make an All-Ireland semi-final or potentially even more? But yeah, like, what were your thoughts on Armagh this year?
Yeah, a lot of people are predicting an A really for Armagh, but because of that Ulster performance, like, they haven't won an Ulster since 2008, and that's like a famine in Armagh, I think, anyway, considering the amount of Ulster sides that have reached the final before they have. Like, that's a pretty bad statistic for them. For that reason, for that performance against Donegal, I'd actually go, I know this is harsh, but I'd go for B. I just think Armagh should be up there winning Ulster championships at this stage. Especially with Donegal, Tyrone going by the wayside. That was their big chance, I think, in my opinion, to win it this year. They performed very, very well in the All-Ireland quarter-final, in fairness to them. Against Donegal, they were absolutely outstanding, but a lot of people predicted them for the All-Ireland final as well once the quarter-finals came around, and they didn't do that either. So just the big moments, Armagh didn't do it for me, so I'd probably give them a B for that reason. They have some nice players, Rory Grugan, Rian O'Neill, Jason Duffy, very good young players coming through. But I just think at the big moments, they kind of flatter to deceive. I don't know what you think yourself.
Yeah, like I think they do have a young enough squad, and in fairness, like they have a lot of young players, obviously, in Rian O'Neill, Oisin O'Neill, some of the other lads have obviously been breaking through, like Conor Turba, all the rest. But yeah, like it's one of them where I do think they made progress though, and I do think that's important. Like the fact they got big wins over Donegal, over Tyrone as well, I think was key, really, because there would have been a worry if they keep getting knocked out of the championship early that they're not making the most of what I think is a very, very good squad and a team that has potential and should, I think, be up there challenging to win Ulster next season. I think there'd be a lot of people's maybe early pick going into next season. So it probably is a missed opportunity, like losing on penalties the way that they did, but like they pushed Galway very, very close. They were down to 14 men for large parts of normal time. I think if they had gotten over Galway, they would have beaten Derry. And then it's one of them, they're in an All-Ireland final, and it would have been an unbelievable season for Armagh. So, I think context is everything. And I do think under McGeaney, there is a plan and they are improving. But I do think they need to sort of take that next step now, which is win an Ulster title, or at least get to a final and be very competitive. But because while they do have this sort of great crop of players, I think they do need to take advantage of it.
They do, definitely. And even that statistic about Ulster championships, like Antrim, Fermanagh, Down, these sort of counties, Cavan, have reached an Ulster final more recently than Armagh. So that's a damning statistic for this Armagh team. They do have young players, definitely, and they will progress over the next few years or so. But like, I get your argument in the quarterfinal against Galway. Like, if that went to a replay, would have Armagh won that game? That would have been a question mark over that. And there's also a question mark I'm hearing from fans as well. If the brawl actually didn't happen, would Armagh have won in extra time? I think they actually would have, because the momentum from that Rian O'Neill kick would have got them over the line in extra time. Would they have beaten Derry? That would have been some battle, I think, the semi-final. But yeah, I think the major hurdle is winning the Ulster Championship, or at least getting to the final, because it's way too long for Armagh at this stage. And Kieran McGeady should probably stay next year. He has to win it next year, though. He has to win the Ulster Championship next year. No excuses at all. I know Tyrone will improve again next year. Derry will improve even more. But I think this is the time now for Armagh to take the Ulster Championship seriously and start to win it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I definitely think they'll be up thereabouts next season. Anyway, I'm sure of that. You have Cavan then, our good friends from Cavan. I mean, obviously, losing in that Tailteann Cup final, which was a huge disappointment from a Cavan perspective. They would have been most people's picks and most people's favourites going into the Tailteann Cup, and they did look home and hose right up until Thomas Gallagher's red card and everything else, which was obviously a big disappointment. And Westmeath sort of kicked on from there. They were promoted at the same time from Division 4, so I think that was their main aim. And I think all in all, they done a lot right. Like, they were very good against Donegal as well in that Ulster Championship game, and potentially could have won that game. So look, Cavan, I think, can look back and think we had a good season. We maybe missed out on the Tailteann Cup, which would have been disappointment. But I think, the bigger thing for Cavan next year will surely just to be get out of Division 3.
Absolutely, yeah. And even in Division 4, their performance, from what I'm hearing from the rants from John McMahon, they weren't that great in Division 4. So, there was that aspect as well. It's a tough one with Cavan because against Donegal, they were brilliant in that game in the Ulster semi-final. And if, things went their way, they could have easily beaten that Donegal team. Antrim, they were absolutely outstanding. Tailteann Cup then against Sligo, they kind of fell over the line in the semi-final. They were good up at that point. Fairness against Fermanagh and Down, they were very good. Westmeath, maybe if Thomas Gallagher's red card didn't happen, we would have been talking about Cavan getting an A here. So it is a tough one, really. I know they should be in Division 4, but I'd probably give them a B. If they won the Tailteann Cup, I'd probably give them an A. But B, I think, is fair enough. They got out of Division 4. They played well in some patches. I thought they were pretty poor against Sligo, and to lose the way they did against Westmeath wasn't great either. But they will improve next year. The main aim will be get out of Division 3. I think they will. They have some very nice young players there. So, I think Cavan will do well next year, and for now, I'd probably give them a B. That's probably fair.
Yeah, I'd go with a B in regards to that one as well. You then have Derry, and look, I think Derry, in my opinion, definitely has to be an A anyway. Like, winning their first Ulster Championship since 1998, I think it is, just off the top of my head. An extraordinary achievement, obviously, for the Derry footballers. You think of how they done it. They beat Tyrone, they beat Monaghan, Donegal, the big three or so, as they say, in Ulster. And then big win over Clare. Obviously disappointment to lose to Galway. And I know a lot of people criticised them for their performance in that game, and fair enough. But I think when you look at their season, you can't fault it. Like, to considering where they came from to win an Ulster title, it's an extraordinary achievement.
It's a real achievement for that Derry team, and it's an undoubted A for me as well. To win an Ulster Championship was a brilliant achievement for them, in fairness to them. The semi-final, it resembled probably Donegal in 2011 against Dublin. They weren't particularly ready for that type of stage, but I think next year we'll see Derry improve under Rory Gallagher. They'll be an outstanding team now next year. Look at their performance against Clare in the quarter-final. It was just exceptional. Look at the attacking talent they had. They played defensive systems, but look, they played it effectively. That was the thing with this Derry team, but that's what struck me about them. And they get into the defensive system, and then they break quickly. It resembles so much of Donegal. I know I'm like a broken record repeating that throughout the year, but this Derry team is so like that Donegal team. And you remember the year after Donegal reached the All-Ireland semi-final, finally, they won the All-Ireland. I wonder, could that happen with this Derry team? It'll be interesting to see now. But, I think it is well-deserved. I think they did outstanding this season. And roll on next year for them. They could do some even better things next year.
Yeah, it will be interesting, all right, as you said there with Donegal. There was clearly a learning process when Jim McGuinness in 2011, it obviously, that first year they learned a lot. And it will be interesting to see if they can kick on even further now next year, going into Ulster and the All-Ireland. You do have Donegal. We were speaking of a few Donegal men there, and Jim McGuinness and all the rest. And Donegal, I think we've spoke quite a bit about Donegal in the last couple of seasons in terms of they're a team with plenty of good players in the county. They're a team with, who can produce big results every now and again. but they're just far too inconsistent, and you know, a good result is followed by a poor result. Obviously Declan Bonner has now stepped away. He won't be manager, so it'd be interesting to see who comes in there. But Donegal, disappointing season I think in anyways, like considering the play, they do have a lot of talent in their team. Like
they do, yeah. They have outstanding talents. You look at Paddy McBrearty, for example, Niall O'Donnell, like Oisin Gallen, where's he gone this year? You know, so there's the argument about Donegal. I probably lead towards, like, the league. I know I predicted them to go down. They stayed up. It fairness to them. I grant them that. The Ulster Championship, the Ulster final, they were very, very poor. I know a lot of people would be saying Derry played poor tactics and all, but Donegal were nearly worse. You know, in that Ulster final, they played their tactics worse than Derry, and even the tactic of bringing Michael Murphy to midfield when he was 32 years of age. I mean, you know, that's not the time to bring Michael Murphy into midfield. Definitely not. Because they stayed up in Division 1, I'll grant them that. I'd probably give them a D. But if they went down, I'd be closer to an F with this Donegal team. Yeah, they are far, far too inconsistent. And even against Cavan, they could have easily lost that game. You know, if luck wasn't on their side. In the quarterfinal, they had a good performance against Armagh, but then they have a terrible performance the next day out. So that's Donegal in a nutshell. As regards to the next manager, I think Maxi Curran, the ladies football manager, will probably come in. I think he has all the credentials. He was assistant manager to Jim McGuinness a few seasons ago, actually, or Rory Gallagher, should I say, in 2016. So he does have credentials. He was probably ladies football manager of the year, so I think he'll come in to Donegal next year. Whether he'll turn around the fortunes, I think he'll be the closest man to do it, but remains to be seen. Will Michael Murphy have another year in the tank? That's another question as well. But for now, yeah, D. If they went down, probably an F.
Yeah, I've gone for a D as well. I think at the end of the day, they stuck around in Division 1, which I think is important. But yeah, the next appointment is definitely crucial, and whether it is Maxi Curran or a Malachy O'Rourke or something of that nature, I think it is crucial that they get the appointment right, because, you know, there's a lot of counties, I think, that have a lot coming through at underage level, but I'm not 100% sure about Donegal, to be honest. And as he said, your Murphys, McBrearty, McHugh, like, a lot of these lads are getting on a bit, you know, that way. So I think it's very crucial that Donegal try and do something next year anyway to give their supporters a bit of joy. But we then have Down, and I think this definitely has to be the fattest F of the entire show, really, or the biggest F, you could say. Yeah, they lost every game in both league and championship, and it's kind of mad because they did have an All-Ireland club winning team who won the All-Ireland Club Senior Football Championship this year in Kilcoo, but obviously that doesn't play anything into these grades. It's obviously about inter-county sides only. And yeah, like, I mean, we all know that they have a lot of very good players in the county, but for whatever reason they don't want to play for Down. Seems to be all sorts of issues with players and management, and you had Caelan Mooney speaking out saying he's not going to play for Down again. James McCartan obviously steps away now. Like, just seems like an absolute mess at Down, and like, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously you don't know what's going on behind the scenes either, but like, it's just mad to see how much they've free fallen, really. And I think it's only going to get worse from here as well, to be honest.
It could do, actually. And even in the McKenna Cup, they lost Antrim as well. I was speaking from the lads from the Saffron Boys as well. And yeah, I think that included the McKenna Cup, I think they would have lost every game. Like, oh my God, you know. Oh, geez. Like, imagine Down were in an All-Ireland final in 2010. They were in an All-Ireland quarter-final in 2012. How the mighty have fallen. Even Ulster final in 2017. I mean, yeah, it you know, it hasn't gone right for Down over the last few years, and I don't even need to explain the F, really. Yeah, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They just look disorganised. Even when I see them play Cork and Páirc Uí Chaoimh, I just didn't see a plan there for Down. I don't know what's wrong with them. They have good club players in Kilcoo. They have some good players like Caelan Mooney. Even Barry O'Hagan's comments about the Tailteann Cup, saying he doesn't care about the competition. I mean, you know, yeah, against Cavan even, I think they lost by something like 12 points or something. Like, it was just, You know, it was terrible year for Down, and I think it actually could get worse. They could even go down. I think I was on the JMAC podcast recently. Kevin McGorty was saying that Down will have a resurgence. I don't think so. I think this could be a slippery slope for Down. They could even go down to Division 4. I don't know what else to say. I hope they recover. I really hope they recover. They have nice fans. They play nice football, to be fair to them. Down. They have some nice players there. They've Kilcoo, great club side. James McCartney's a respectable guy. Conor Laverty, who potentially will come in as a respectable manager. But things are just not working. I don't know what it is about Down, but I don't know where they go from here, and I think they could easily slip to Division 4 next year, which is so sad for a side, the most historic Ulster Championship side, to go to Division 4. I mean, it's sad. It really is sad. I think the whole country will be sad.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's mad to see them obviously free falling, like you said, and you know, like there is, like I've seen them got to a few under-20 Ulster finals and all the rest. Like there is good young players there, and you've seen even a few of them, like Sheelan Johnson, obviously playing for Kilcoo and everything else. Like there is some good players there. Make no mistake about that from Down, but for whatever reason, they just don't want to play for the county. They just don't really have much interest. You know, a lot of them just don't have much of an interest. But look, for whoever comes in, whether it is Conor Laverty or someone else of that nature, I think it's a big job from a Down point of view going into 2023. We have Fermanagh then, and Fermanagh avoiding relegation from Division 3 once again, which, you know, was a big thing obviously at the start of the year. I think Sean Quigley again, you know, very much being the main man for this Fermanagh side. They were competitive enough against Tyrone when they lost in the Ulster Championship, and you know, obviously got beat by Cavan in the Tailteann Cup as well. But look, I think Fermanagh will be happy enough with how the year went. Really, like they avoided relegation. They were competitive enough against Tyrone, I felt. So there is some optimism there from a Fermanagh perspective. I don't think they can be too disappointed with how the year went.
Absolutely agree with you. I think this is down the middle as it gets, really. Look, they stayed up in the Division 3, and I think you predicted Fermanagh to go down to Division 4. I was like, seriously, this Fermanagh team is pretty good to go down to Division 4, but even look at the stats on Twitter about the county's most reliant on players. Fermanagh were top of the list with Sean Quigley. That just shows you, like, he's a man machine. He's an unbelievable player. Even all those years ago against Dublin, outstanding player he is. Fermanagh, they've some good young players, like Darren McGurn's a very good young player. Conor Love. They have some very nice young talent in that team. Kieran Donnelly is building a side, but I think that's as down the middle as you could get out of Fermanagh. I think they will improve again next year. They could be dark horses to go up to Division 2, I think. They have some very nice players, a good manager, a good stable manager, Kieran Donnelly. So Fermanagh look in good state at the moment, and I'd give them a C.
Yeah, I think it was actually Antrim and Wicklow I tipped to go down.
Did you?
To give myself. It was the year previous I tipped Fermanagh to go down. It was 2020, and they nearly got promoted in the end. So I was made look like a bit of an idiot eventually, anyway. But nonetheless, we do have Monaghan, our second last county to discuss here, and look, I mean, for Monaghan, they avoided relegation from Division 1 again. The great escape. They beat Dublin on the final day, which was the big thing. I would give Fermanagh a C as well, actually, by the way. I think I forgot to mention that. But in terms of Monaghan, as I said, look, avoided relegation from Division 1. And then in the championship, like disappointing defeat to Derry and then losing to Mayo in the qualifiers, which was disappointing. But again, I think people forget that Monaghan, you know, like they aren't a big county. Like they are maxing their resources hugely. And you know, I do think there might be a bit of a fall over the next couple of years, to be perfectly honest. But I think in terms of this year, I think, you know, I'd go with a C. What would you go with?
Yeah, I'd go C as well. They stayed up at Division 1 unexpectedly with that last day win over Dublin. I don't want to rub it in, Aaron, but brilliant achievement for Monaghan. Jack McCarron kicking that last bit of point. Brilliant for them. But yeah, in the championship, look, they beat a poor Down team. They lost to Derry and Mayo, which, to be honest, like, against Mayo, looking back at it, like, if referee decisions went Monaghan's way in that game, we could be talking about a B, So, I'd probably give them a C as well. But it is coming to the end for this Monaghan team, but they've given us so much memories over the last few years. They could have easily reached an All-Ireland final in 2018. They won a couple of Ulster championships. And for Monaghan to achieve as much as they did over the last few years, to stay in Division 1 for as long as they have and counting the years, I think it's a remarkable achievement for this Monaghan team, considering the population and everything. There's rumours Jason Sherlock will come into it. I think he'll be a good appointment for this Monaghan team. Bring through the young players. They still have young players coming through, like Aaron Mulligan, Sean Jones. They have a good crop of young players there for Monaghan, and still Jack McCarron, I think he's still young enough in that team. Ryan McAnespy. They still have some young. Obviously, Conor McManus is getting on a bit. That's the worry. But at the same time, they still have young players. They're still producing young players, which begs the question, how do they do it? With such a small population. But at the same time, good achievement for them for doing that. But for this year, I'd probably give them a C. But if they beat Mayo, which they could have easily done, maybe we'd be talking about a B.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously they did have those decisions that went against them at the end of the Mayo game, to be fair. But I suppose last but not least, whatever way you want to look at it, anyway, it is Tyrone. We're about 2 hours in, and we're getting to the 2021 All-Ireland champions from, or I suppose the previous All-Ireland champions. And yeah, look, Tyrone, I mean, obviously the talk has been about them being the worst ever All-Ireland champions, and I do think it is a fair argument with all due respect. I mean, I know they avoided relegation from Division 1 and they got those big wins against Mayo and Kerry, which probably gives them a bit of food in the bank, to be fair. But having lost in the championship to Derry and Armagh and beaten quite convincingly as well, I think Tyrone will look back at 2022. In fact, they won't want to look back at it at all. I think they'll want to forget about it, to be honest.
Yeah, even the players leaving, that's a worrying sign for Tyrone. Even Paul Donaghy leaving, Tiernan McCann, there's a large exodus of Tyrone players. I know they did well to beat Kerry and Mayo in the league, and I know they were playing Derry and Armagh, but as you mentioned there, Aaron, the way they lost those games, they lost them convincingly. The game was over. Both games were over. The Derry game was over at half-time. The Armagh game was over about 20 minutes to go. So, to take that to account, the way they went out of the championship, I'd have to give them an F. I'm sorry, Tyrone fans, but this year is not a year they'd want to delete it from the history books, and they generally don't retain All-Irelands, do they? I think the only impressive year they had after winning All-Ireland was 2009. Cork beat them that year to end their quest for back-to-back All-Irelands, but yeah, other years they haven't done it. I think they lost to Laois one year. I think it was 2006, correct me if I'm wrong now. In 2004, they did pretty terribly as well. And obviously this year. So they're just not a team that defend All-Irelands. They will be back next year, I think. There's some good players in Tyrone. Logan and Dewar will get the best out of these players. So I think they will be back next year. But I think it's an F, undoubted F for this year, despite the way they played against Mayo and Kerry in the league.
Yeah, I would give them a D just because they did stay up in the league and they did get those wins over Mayo and Kerry. I do think they were important wins for Tyrone to stay in Division 1. But as you said there, there is potential for Tyrone to be back up there. As I said, I do think that they could be the closest team to potentially stop to stop Kerry potentially going on and dominating. But at the same time, it does seem like a bit of crossroads because it could go one way or another really for Tyrone. You are getting a lot of players that are opting out as well. And I think that's a bit of a worry.
It is, yeah. It's a huge worry for this Tyrone team. And even with our man Derry coming through the ranks as well, is there any argument that Tyrone will even win an Ulster next year? I know Donegal and Monaghan are falling off a bit, but Armagh and Derry are the new teams coming up. Cavan as well. Fermanagh have some nice young players as well. So this will be difficult. But the only positive for Tyrone was actually their under-20 win. You were mentioning it earlier. They do have some good young players coming out of that. Rory Canavan was outstanding. Michael McLeanan. Devlin from Niall Devlin is his name from wing back. Some very nice young players there for Tyrone, and that's something they can build on. And they still have young players in the senior team that they can go another year or so. So that's a positive for Tyrone. But for this year, it just didn't click. But next year, I think there will be a force again.
Absolutely, yeah. Irish Footy Vlog says, top chat, lads. Well done. Really enjoy that. Yeah, much appreciated. Make sure to check out Irish Footy Vlogs as well. Some great content over there covering Irish football, Irish soccer, or whatever spin you want to put on it. So yeah, make sure to go over there and check them out when you get a chance. And yeah, look, I suppose we've been going on for 2 hours anyway, so it must be maybe a record for the longest podcast or whatever I've done on the channel. So yeah, much appreciated, Matthew, for coming on. Thank you for anyone who tuned in. If you could hit the like button and subscribe, it would be very much appreciated. And yeah, cheers, Matthew, for coming on.
Thanks very much, Aaron, for having me.